I am Werner von Braun. This motion picture was...
So here's the incredibly simple story about how I got the chance to shoot Stanley Kubrick. He's been my idol as a filmmaker since I was a little kid. You know, so I started off just writing letters, and you know, I figured that would work, but then I figured about, you know, the 6 degrees of separation idea. Maybe I should employ that concept. So yeah, what I did was I reached out to my dad, you know, and he's a businessman and pretty connected, so he knew some people. So we went from him and we called the governor of Connecticut, good guy, really connected as well, who actually knew Walter Payton. He was connected to a guy at Warner Brothers named Steve Ross, who ran it before he died, who then, of course, ate at a food restaurant, met Trump, who we made friends with, and Trump, of course, knew my Uncle Jim, who started Ronald McDonald House. Actually knew some people in the entertainment industry who knew a friend of Trump's who got called again and put into the loop. But he actually, this time, said he knew someone at Disney. I think it was Ivanka who went, and she actually got the call set up with Kubrick. 11 degrees of separation.
Hello?
Yeah, I got on the speakerphone with the assistant.
Listen, I can't hear too well. Do you suppose you could turn the music down just a little?
And Stanley for about 38 seconds.
Oh, that's much better. Yes. Fine, I can hear you now. I'm coming through fine too, eh? Good, then... Well then, as you say, we're both coming through fine. Good. Well, it's good that you're fine then, and I'm fine. I agree with you. It's great to be fine.
So once we got past kind of the awkward part of every kind of first conversation you have with somebody, he let me pitch him.
You know how we've always talked about the possibility
of letting me come to England and to let me...
well, let me finish.
For him to allow me to...
Let me finish. Why do you think I'm calling you? Just to say hello? Of course I like to speak to you. Of course I like to say hello. Not now, but anytime. It's a friendly call. Of course it's a friendly call.
You know, regarding this idea of doing an interview, just getting 1 hour to do an interview. And he surprisingly said yes.
All right, testing 1, 2. All right, excuse me, sir. Could you just check my levels? Could you just say, could you say the title of your new film? That would be great for my levels.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes wide shut.
Okay.
And I just got on a plane. I even got a chance, you know, to talk to the pilots. This was before 9/11.
To where? Kubrick. Kubrick.
I told them where I was going, and they were kind of excited. They were Kubrick fans as well. During the flight to London, by the way, I just could not sit still. I was just so excited. I was planning all the questions, writing them down. What was I going to do with this 1 hour I had with this legend, with this person that's been called the greatest filmmaker ever? I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe it was happening. But, you know, what was interesting about this was I found out when I got to London, there was only one condition, with one condition for doing this. And for 15 years, not only could I not show the footage of whatever I filmed that day, but I couldn't even tell anybody I had done this. I couldn't tell an agent, a lawyer, an investor. I couldn't tell my wife-to-be. I couldn't tell my parents. I couldn't tell anybody, and that was sort of frustrating, personally, artistically, financially, and otherwise. And so therefore, it wasn't until basically 2014 that I was able to even disclose to people that I had even gotten this interview and do the raise to finish this film, which you are about to watch right here. So you know, I hereby present the fruits of a 17-year labor, and which I call Shooting Stanley Kubrick.
He is considered by many the greatest film director the medium has ever known.
Frankly, I think that's an understatement. I mean, I think the guy is pretty much a god amongst men. And think you may be as surprised as me as to what he talked about. I felt like a man.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
A mission that was unique in my entire life. So I rented this really sweet ride, and I drove to the left hand side of the road, which was really a weird experience. And then I got to Kubrick's. Okay, I hate to interrupt and break the fourth wall, but I thought I had the right address. I mean, there wasn't exactly a mailbox that said Kubrick. But then I was like, sweet, they're sending a car. It was like a Rolls Royce. It was sweet. And I thought Stanley was going to pop out, but...
We got to get him out of here.
Unless he had a makeover, that wasn't Stanley. Just for the record, I have to tell you that I almost shit my pants when I saw this guy. He pretty much was the scariest guy I've seen in my life. Having absolutely no idea what's going on, I took the envelope hoping that would make the guy go away, and fortunately, that actually worked. But I had no idea what was going on. If it wasn't already weird enough, the damn piano came out of nowhere. I don't know where the hell that was, in the woods somewhere. And I read the letter. So apparently I had flown across the Atlantic for no reason, and Trump was a big liar. Okay, that was a total joke. If you haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, that was a scene from it. Just playing around, trying to do my own creative thing. I probably failed. Anyway, he wanted me to sign some papers, no big deal. We were scheduled to meet the next day. Everything was cool. Just chill in London, take in the sights, maybe meet a few people, make some friends. Then they called.
Are you sorry you faded away there?
Then canceled.
What?
The meeting.
Well, listen, how do you think I feel about it?
It would just be a couple of days.
Yes?
He was editing Eyes Wide Shut.
Right?
It'd only just be a few days.
What? I see.
Well.
Uh-huh.
A few days turned into a few weeks. Well, a few weeks turned into actually a few months.
Can you imagine how I feel about it?
And basically, after waiting by the phone for approximately 6 months, I finally got a call.
Hello?
On March the 3rd, 1999.
Is there something bad here?
Yes?
I was told he was profusely apologetic.
I am as sorry as you are.
So sorry, so busy editing Eyes Wide Shut.
Don't say that you're more sorry than I am, because I'm capable of being just as sorry as you are. So we're both sorry, all right? All right.
They gave me precise directions to his massive estate.
Where is that?
I almost crashed my car 3 times on the way.
Oh, you're calling first, will you?
The day had come to finally shoot Stanley Kubrick.
Robert, now let's see your position.
Goddamn soul. Just a glass of beer. Hi.
Nicole, with making Eyes Wide Shut with your husband and Stanley Kubrick, what was your first impression of Stanley?
I remember thinking, He's sort of scruffy.
It's good enough. Classic. It's good enough. Fair enough. What are you drinking?
What'll it be? I'm awfully glad you asked. I can't remember. So here's what.
Desperate begging.
You slip me a bottle of bourbon,
Okay.
a little glass,
Okay.
and some ice.
Okay.
You're not too busy, are you? You can do that?
I'm going to get a PA.
That's swell.
We'll freshen that up.
I always liked you.
I know my attorney and your attorney have gone.
Is there anything else? Just
We'll make you another one. Freshen that up.
No. If you had a tea break at 4, you don't need to break for this tea break.
if there's anything else, just they notify my lawyers. I'll take care of it.
This must be just, a complimentary tea break.
They notify my lawyers. I'll take care of it.
Fucked around for an hour.
As you got strong at the end.
Is everything looking in order?
Broke for tea at 4.
Sign the release. Correct?
And you have a tea break at 6 o'clock.
Could you just say?
It's a quarter to 7, and then you break for a meal at 7:30.
Could you say the title of your new film?
You don't have to break for tea at 6.
Levels?
So figure it out.
My upcoming film,
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut, is all about secrecy.
All right, Terry.
I have seen one or two things in my life, but never anything like this.
What exactly is the treatment here going to be then?
Just going to show you some film.
Robert, now let's see your position.
To finally shoot Stanley Kubrick.
Robert, now let's see your position.
What'll it be?
What are you drinking?
I'm awfully glad you asked.
I can't remember.
So here's what.
I think it's got to be a last. Desperate begging.
You slip me a bottle of bourbon,
Okay.
a little glass,
Okay.
and some ice.
Okay.
You can do that? Too busy, are you?
We'll get a PA.
That's swell.
We'll freshen that up.
I always liked you.
I know my attorney and your attorney have gone back and forth.
If there's anything else?
We'll make you another one.
No. If you had a tea break at 4,
If there's anything else? Just
you don't need to break for this tea break.
they notify my lawyers.
This must be just, a complimentary tea break.
I'll take care of it.
Fucked around for an hour.
As you got strong at the end.
Is everything looking in order?
Broke for tea at 4.
Sign the release. Correct?
Check my levels.
And you have a tea break at 6 o'clock.
Could you just say?
It's a quarter to 7, and then you break for a meal at 7:30.
Could you say the title of your new film?
You don't have to break for tea at 6.
Levels?
So figure it out.
My upcoming film,
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut, is all about secrecy.
All right, Terry.
It's an honor to be doing this.
These two men are a little far apart.
I am just sincerely thankful and grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank you for doing this interview. I know you rarely give interviews.
That's right.
Despite the fact that he never gave interviews.
That's true.
Do you need water? Are you okay?
Let's stay there now. We're really getting ready.
No, would you like something?
One other thing. 3 shakes. There's 3 beats when you do it. When they say, "Here's my rifle. This is my gun. This is my gun. This is for fighting. This is for fighting. This is for fun. This is for fun." 3 shakes. This is my gun. No, you're timed to the thing. Here's my rifle. This is my gun. This is for fighting. This is for fun. This is for fun. So give it 3 because a lot of people are still touch and go.
You look at your incredible body of work. People think your films are the best films ever made.
Considered by many
People think you're
the greatest film director.
You must be very proud.
Yes.
You know how we've always talked about the possibility of something going wrong with the bomb.
But of course, like most perfectionists,
What exactly is the treatment going to be then?
I often wish I
Just going to show you some films.
could have done things differently.
You little scumbag! I got your name! I got your ass! You will not laugh! You will not cry!
Stop it! Stop it, please! I beg you!
What made you call?
The whole point of the doomsday machine is lost. If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
15 years from the day of your death,
I love working for Uncle Sam!
which, God forbid, I mean, I hope you make 80 more films or,
I love working for Uncle Sam!
well, at your rate, 3 more films or whatever.
right.
Let me know
May I ask,
just who I am!
why the delay?
Let me know
Um,
just who I am!
Upon greeting Kubrick, my idol, what can I say? It's not that I wasn't as impressed as I thought I'd be, but he was, well, he looked tired. He looked unkempt. His hair was long. He just looked like he'd been working himself to death. And frankly, I was worried about him. I had nothing to lose, so I decided to be honest with him.
No offense. Look a little haggard right now. Like,
well, also, yeah, because I haven't been taking care of myself too well.
because you look a little worn.
I've been drinking a lot, but
Clearly, he had something on his mind.
We are all, by any practical definition of the words, foolproof and incapable of error.
well,
No 9,000 computer
this is difficult
has ever made a mistake
because it's the first time I've talked about it.
or distorted information.
Sure, I
Just a moment.
that's fine.
Just a moment.
Take your time all the time you need.
I'm so preoccupied with my work.
Well, he acts like he has genuine emotions.
Innovation,
Of course, he's programmed that way to make it easier for us to talk to him.
risk-taking,
But as to whether or not he has real feelings
regrets.
is something I don't think anyone can truthfully answer.
Why are you giving this interview?
Because it started to get to me after a while. I've always been conflicted about it, I guess, but I wasn't conscious of it until years later. At first, I was just blown away by
by these wonderful circumstances,
chance,
and began his professional work.
the opportunity, the challenge.
Rien ne va plus.
Of making this production, and I went into it like it was a regular film, like another
Sorry about this.
regular film of mine.
I know it's a bit silly.
Not thinking too much about the long-term effects, the what it would mean to society if it was ever discovered.
What are you talking about?
It's puzzling.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
Let me put it this way.
a confession of sorts. A movie I made that nobody is aware of, even though they've seen it.
The movie you made, no one knows you made. Is that what you said?
That's right. Is it intriguing? Do I have you intrigued? I perpetrated a huge fraud on the American public, which I am now about to detail, involving the United States government and NASA, that the moon landing was fake. The moon landings all were fake. And I was the person.
Here's Johnny!
Who filmed it.
Okay. What are you talking?
It blew my mind.
You're serious?
No way! I think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
That's great.
I am serious.
Why didn't you tell the world, eh?
We landed on the moon! The moon is indicated.
This is setting us back 4 years. We can't land on the moon. We aren't touching down for 5 years.
Do you understand what this means? NASA can't do it. They can't land man and come back.
Can make a film that shows us going to the moon without actually doing it.
Kubrick is getting NASA to make sure that his space movie looks like real space. And so we're going to use his space movie to make sure the real space movie looks like space. Do you understand how crazy that is?
Have you ever had an ethical problem with this at all? This is like one of those good lies, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Did they find out what we're doing? Have you heard of the conspiracy theory before?
We asked this adventure on which man has ever involved.
Shortly after the 3 astronauts' triumphant return to Earth and their period of quarantine, carefully observed by President Richard Nixon.
Let's talk about this, because this is fascinating. I remember very clearly, I think anybody who was alive at the time does. I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon.
No, you didn't.
What?
Because there wasn't any television. There wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation.
Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, sank into a depression for no apparent reason.
So you associated what you saw with...
I have very hazy memories.
Yeah, I know.
He became an alcoholic.
Well, no, what we saw was we all were gathered around the old curved top radio and listened.
Talking about...
I think that was the reason.
You know, how many feet we were going to the left and right. And
he became very discouraged.
Then I said, contact light, engine stop. So I decided to retire.
It was
exciting. A few other things, and then Neil said...
You could hear him wandering around in the streets, stumbling about, raving.
Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. Did we?
Man,
how about that? Did people go to the moon or not?
That was very exciting.
Not a bad line.
Yeah, yeah.
Fake moon landing.
I find them difficult to put out of my
I
mind.
don't want this to be an R-rated film, so I don't want to say what the blank, but seriously,
I know it's a bit silly.
I worked almost 8 months to secure this once-in-a-lifetime interview that almost no one else could ever get. And instead of talking about his 16 films that I've adored since I was being a child...
A massive fraud.
We are still
an unparalleled fraud
with Apollo 11.
Perpetrated against them.
Unit going to internal power.
They should know.
I understand.
Window is a relatively level plain cratered with a fairly large number of craters of the 5 to 50 foot variety.
It's all based on
It was fake.
a kind of mind-blowing situation.
Wait.
The idea was to make you believe
it was not real.
It all the way.
T-minus 60 seconds.
You really were watching that.
Well, let's get on with it.
The moon landings were fake.
Sorry about this.
Okay.
Rumors about
A fictional moon landing.
no one could have been unaware of the very strange stories
It was not real.
floating around before we left
A fantasy.
on the moon. I never gave these stories much credence.
The moon landings were fake.
But particularly in view of some of the other things that have happened,
It was fake.
Kubrick was a strange guy.
Yeah,
Do you know he would
was.
do complex mathematics in his spare time?
Really?
Yeah, he's like a legitimate genius.
Wow.
Like there's a big crazy conspiracy about The Shining that inside of it is all sorts of information that it relates to the moon landing.
Yeah. Well, and they say that he directed the fake movie about the fake moon landing.
Well, that's the big conspiracy theory. He was into weird shit. He was a legitimate genius.
Damn.
He did some wild ass fucking movies.
Yeah,
though, man.
he did.
2001. This conspiracy theory about him directing the moon landing was that he was doing it at the same time he was doing 2001. So because he was faking this space movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, that they used him to fake the moon landing footage. It's one of my favorite all-time conspiracies because it's so strange that we never went back. But there's so many weird things to it. There's so many weird things with the photographs, and there's like intersecting shadows that indicate different light sources. There's a lot of weird shit. The fact that this is the only time in human history that something is not cheaper, easier, and faster to replicate than it was in 1969. Between 1969 and 1972, there was 7 trips, 6 successful, where they went to the moon and back. And every space flight since then has been like near Earth orbit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything is like, just a few miles up. They never go into deep space and come back. The only time they came back was during the moon landings in the 60s when they were lying about everything. But the thing is, like, Nixon was president back then. It's so romantic to think that they faked it. Also, here's another reason. If you watch the post-flight press conference, but it seems completely like they're full of shit. When they come back, it seems like they're lying and they're nervous, and they ask them about the stars. And Michael Collins, they asked him about stars. And in the press conference, he's like, I don't recall seeing any stars. And then later, when he wrote a book about it, he talked about how magnificent the stars looked. They also point to the inconsistencies of the actual movement of the astronauts on the moon. Like there's videos that make it look like they were on wires. There's videos that
there's like the back of his suit is being pulled by something.
It's weird. But there's a video of them where it looks like they're on trampolines, which is very strange. It's fun. It's fun to think that Kubrick faked it all.
It's no secret that NASA always wanted to fulfill this Kennedy prophecy.
We choose to go to the moon. Landing a man on the moon. In this decade. This decade is out. And do the other things. And returning him safely to the earth. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
If we are successfully able to execute a touchdown and return.
Why are you telling me? Why in God's name?
Thank you for telling me the truth.
Don't you think it's important for people to know the truth?
You deserve it.
I mean, they're already suspicious of the government.
At the T-minus 8.9 second mark.
They may as well have their suspicions confirmed.
And there's a fake documentary, not a real documentary, but a fake, like a mockumentary, where he's admitting and people are talking about. Have you seen that one?
No, but that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, dude, you didn't even know there's an actual real interview with him where he admits that he faked the moon landing. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's fake, but it's...
Dig deep enough, you might uncover the truth.
Things wrong, something big.
The moon landing in 69,
12,
which was 2 years before my birth.
10.
Total fiction.
9.
Total fiction.
At the beginning. The way all our preparations were kept under such tight security.
On the eve of the moonshot, NASA turned to Hollywood, the realm of make-believe, and in particular to Jack Torrance, then a young producer at Paramount. He now lives in New York.
The White House and the Space Administration, NASA, quickly realized that the race to the moon was really a war of images.
1 month earlier, the Russian Yuri Gagarin had become the first man in space. The Soviets had won in Korea, Berlin, and Cuba.
Between the Russians...
All that was left was the moon.
And the United States.
And they would do anything to get there first.
Because our facilities were pretty rudimentary. So they decided that the space race had to be turned into a pure Hollywood product.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
A show. So they came to see us with one goal.
The base is being put on condition red.
I'm at the foot of the ladder.
Spring that's at the end of the string pulled off of the pit fin. Now, however, I was able to reach up and get hold of the pit fin and pull it loose. Roger, I understand.
Hollywood could do it.
I say the jet deflector that's mounted on quad 4 seems to be, the surface of it seems to be more wrinkled than the one that's on quad 1. Generally, underneath part of the lens seems to have stood up quite well.
You little scumbag! I got your name! I got your ass! You will not laugh! You will not cry!
You know how we've always talked about the possibility of something going wrong with the bomb.
The whole point of the doomsday machine is lost.
If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Is there something bad here?
I think a lot of things happen right here in this particular hotel. And not all of them was good. Great coffee, isn't it?
He sat in the Kurova milk bar, trying to make up our razoo dogs what to do with the evening. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultraviolence.
You will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death, praying for war.
Today, war is too important to be left to politicians.
Quilty, I want you to concentrate. You're going to die.
Trying to make me jealous.
If you men only knew.
I just want to be good.
My body is
Goodness comes from within. Goodness is chosen.
We could create the dream.
And a man cannot choose.
It had to be absolutely amazing. Hollywood could do it. We could create the dream. All of Hollywood stopped working.
He ceases to be a man.
Wendy, I'm home.
not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again. Hey,
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
Do you want to die standing up or sitting down?
I want to die like a champion.
I will not go down in history as the greatest mass murderer since Adolf Hitler.
Now it was lovely music that came to my aid.
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. Here's Johnny.
Think we waistcoats for freedom? This is a slaughter.
We're awake now. And hopefully for a long time to come.
For me, something you call love, but confess.
Instead of Baroque concertos, Kubrick opts for the iconic sound of the Vietnam War, rock and roll.
Ah, get some, baby! Get some, come on! Get it, come on! Get some, yeah!
I wanted to be the first kid on my block to get a confirmed kill.
And they gave us carte blanche.
I look around the area, the contrast in general is comes out completely by virtue of the shadows looking down sun.
We decided on new spacesuits for the astronauts.
Buzz, this is Houston. You've got about 10 minutes left now prior to commencing your EVA termination activities. Over.
We changed the shape of the rockets. We moved the launch pad so that the sun would be behind it at liftoff. We redid all the lighting. The hypocrisy stretched to coating the rocket engines with gold leaf, even though it was of absolutely no use. We added 100 more spotlights. It was most of all to show that it was all so expensive. And this was just for a little film.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Frank Reynolds at ABC Space Headquarters in New York.
But it was going to be the most expensive film in the history of cinema.
Seconds away.
This is not
from the Apollo 11 liftoff.
Where I thought the interview was going.
Hi, we have ignition.
Why did they have to fake it?
I'm just saying,
why?
Why would the government need to do something like that?
Because it is impossible to get
To the moon.
I'm sorry.
In this decade.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Because they are hard.
We have a liftoff at 35 minutes after the hour.
Nixon wanted to, they were planning. Yeah, he wanted to fake this moon landing.
The world watched and listened.
Are you contending that people don't want to know the truth about the world, reality, the moon landing?
There's only one small catch.
The government, knowing this, takes advantage of it by perpetrating fraud.
It never happened.
After fraud.
It's all a lie.
After fraud.
A fantastic $30 billion hoax.
All right, that's the end of the speech. Now we're getting to what they call the moment of truth.
Total commitment.
How'd you end up giving in, being complicit with this fraud? But they dangled all this power and all this flattery on you, essentially, and...
Yeah, it got to me after a while.
35 seconds.
What do you think this mission will tell us about man?
2 minutes, 10 seconds, and counting.
Critics have been asking one question about the stunning visuals of Barry Lyndon.
It turned out that NASA was the original customer of Zeiss, and Stanley then said, well, let me speak to them and see whether we could test it. Let me worry about that.
Why did NASA's top officials, and Werner von Braun, the father of space conquest, agree to lend Stanley Kubrick this famous camera and its legendary lens? This unique lens had been a jealously guarded secret since its conception, the only one of its kind in the world. Worth millions of dollars, it was the only lens capable of filming spy satellites in pitch darkness.
Good. The last three were pretty good.
And it finally worked.
The last two were better than the previous two.
NASA's decision to lend Kubrick this legendary lens was the culmination of a story that had begun 15 years before. In 1961, John F. Kennedy, in a famous speech, made landing on the moon his top priority. The task of putting a man on the moon was entrusted to the German scientist Werner von Braun. Recruited at the end of the Second World War, von Braun had worked for NASA ever since, with complete impunity.
It's about the ability to do things with military technology. All that stuff they use for NASA, all the stuff they use for the stealth bomber, the space shuttle, all those missions, that's to fuel the military-industrial complex.
After Kennedy said his thing, you're saying?
The Soviets decided to meet Kennedy's challenge. Towards the end of 1966, the CIA intercepted a memo indicating that the Soviets were ready to put men on the moon. All the Soviets could do now was sit back and watch the Americans triumph. For the White House, putting a man on the moon had become the priority of priorities.
It's a long, complicated story.
Only a few people need to know.
I'll tell you a fascinating story.
The whole thing?
Are you running?
On July the 17th, 1969, the President of the United States, Richard Nixon, gave the go-ahead for the launch of Apollo 11, with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins on board. It's an incredible story. Newly elected, Nixon was up to his neck in the Vietnam War. He needed a big stunt to reverse his negative image with the American public.
President Nixon was on the telephone, speculating. He kept fiddling with the telephone cord.
Fly me to the moon. The President of the United States was irate.
He was very upset about it, and that he felt that something had gone wrong and maybe he was responsible.
Then one of the presidential advisors...
People didn't believe that you could go.
It was Werner von Braun who first realized that the race to the moon must be entertaining.
Well, Werner von Braun, of course, did.
A show.
The director didn't think so.
What if we film...
Werner von Braun and his conspirators got a free ride to the States.
The man was just too brilliant.
Half-life.
They turned Nazi into NASA.
A show.
He knew that...
I'm convinced that in the space field...
we couldn't do it.
After several meetings with Walt Disney...
or Donald Rumsfeld...
an idea took shape.
Said hesitantly...
It is commonly believed that man will fly directly from the Earth to the moon. But to do this, we would require a vehicle of such gigantic proportions that it would prove an economic impossibility.
The Russians are ahead of us. After we are running as fast as they do,
they just couldn't wait.
I would think that
there's still a considerable gap to close.
It would not be difficult, mein Führer.
And only...
I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Under the Masonic moon.
The future will tell whether we'll manage to
possibly
close that gap.
100 years?
I suppose it never occurred to you.
He had just become president.
Only Hollywood, the dream factory itself, could transform a dull rocket launch which no one took any notice of into a mega production. And Stanley Kubrick was about to convince the last doubters. The famous director, working closely with NASA, had started to shoot 2001: A Space Odyssey. The shock produced by the rushes when they were shown in the basement of the White House confirmed what NASA already knew, that a moon landing would drive the public wild.
The film is clearly a tremendous PR exercise for NASA. The fact that there was an artist coming up with these totally new and fantastic ideas and visions, of course, stimulated the support for the whole project.
Let me play among the stars.
The first steps on the moon in a studio.
Tranquility.
Then if we fail, we can always show those pictures to the public.
I talked to the president.
Holy.
And Kissinger supported it.
Living fuck.
The president was prepared to do so. And I was prepared to support that.
Holy shit.
But in the last analysis,
I honestly think you...
the only person that could make the decision to do A, B, or C
What?
is the President of the United States under our system. And he would have to order it done.
To sit down calmly.
Nixon settled back in his chair and closed his eyes for a few minutes.
Stress pill and think things over.
And then he stood up and said,
The fucking moon.
Gentlemen, you have less than 2 weeks to get everything prepared.
That was big. That was a big idea. It was an important thing, and a lot of effort went into it.
It was an anguishing decision for President Nixon to make. And I think he made the right decision.
He was the president, and he deserves the credit.
He did that on his own.
For having had the courage to do it.
Sensible thing to do.
Then he came over to me and picked up all my notes, ripped them up into little pieces, and threw them in the wastebasket.
And I think it is a great symptom of the strength of America that this was even conceivable.
I thought it was the right thing to do because we have to do something to show that we're still the United States of America. And President Nixon said, I've decided to do that.
You went to the White House?
I met Pat actually first.
And I need you to do this job. We're going to do it. It was just amazing. So we were trying to figure out who would do what when.
Boy, that was an experience.
He simply has got to have the person he wants in that job. And it has to be someone who's capable of doing it.
I think she was on painkillers or something.
And it has to be somebody he knows well. I said, I'd like to talk to one person.
When I met with Nixon...
A decision is being made.
President Nixon.
I told everybody about this dream I had.
He had his shoes off, which, you know, and he could smell his feet, so it's just really kind of amazing.
And he said, who?
You know, and he was, you know...
By the president.
And he was already drinking, so I decided to join him.
Donald Rumsfeld was the first to propose Stanley Kubrick.
He was drinking Dewar's, I think, which... I mean, if you're going to drink scotch, okay, but Dewar's, I don't know. Anyway...
Get the president out of the way and hire Stanley Kubrick.
And he was already drinking, so I decided to join him. I don't remember what I had, because I drink almost anything. He was drinking Dewar's, I think, which... I mean, if you're going to drink scotch, okay, but Dewar's, I don't know. So Nixon sat me down. First, he...
The film would have to be perfect, but the set could never be built in time.
How about you walk me through it?
The filming of 2001: A Space Odyssey was drawing to a close in a suburb of London. Why not use the sets there?
Stanley Kubrick.
I was contacted before I started making 2001.
Rumsfeld was sure that Kubrick would not refuse.
The man who created 2001.
During the Kennedy administration, the White House had granted him special authorization to access strategic areas of the Pentagon during the preparations for the film Dr. Strangelove.
You kind of wonder if he made a deal.
Kubrick owed them.
Under the Masonic moon.
I told Mr. Nixon it's very dangerous to lie in the United States. You can't pull a con like that in a democracy.
And
when he was brought into it,
too many people would talk. It would be absurd. But he said, almost sadly, go ahead anyway. Rumsfeld offered to go and negotiate personally with Stanley Kubrick.
How the deal was made.
Everyone hoped that the boys would come home soon.
The mechanics of it.
They had seen Strangelove. He requested use of the
B-52s
to film.
He'd sent the Pentagon the script, and they read the script and said no.
Under the Masonic moon.
He got pictures from Aviation Weekly, and with his set designer, they rebuilt the interior and the exterior of B-52s using photographs. They got word of this, and they sent two people. They had visited England, where he was filming, to look at what he was doing, and he actually told people on the set that he may get arrested here. He wasn't sure.
We had a meeting.
One more day and they'll drop from the plane and splash into the ocean.
And they came on the set, and they were
very impressed,
completely blown away.
We're aware that you were in the presence of genius.
The look. They were very impressed by the final.
The great film. Great film.
Under the Masonic moon.
It's one of my personal favorites. His.
Chaos flight controllers going around the hall.
There was a difference of opinion.
Kubrick was surprised and amused by the idea, but began by refusing.
There were some that just believed honestly that we will never be able to get there. There's just no chance.
Rumsfeld wouldn't give up.
He had just become president.
You went to the White House?
I met Pat actually first. Boy, that was an experience. I think she was on painkillers or something.
And while we're chatting here so enjoyably,
Yeah, when I met with Nixon.
a decision is being made.
President Nixon.
I told everybody about this dream I had.
He had his shoes off, which, you know, and he could smell his feet, so it's just really kind of amazing, you know. And he was, you know,
By the president.
and he was already drinking, so I decided to join him. He was drinking Dewar's, I think, which, I mean, if you're going to drink scotch, okay, but Dewar's, I don't know. Anyway, so Nixon sat me down. First, he complimented me on...
We're only asking you to do one thing. Just leave us the keys to the studio for one weekend, just so we can shoot a bit of film and take a few shots. Everything will be tidied up again by Monday morning. Kissinger flattered him, telling him that Dr. Strangelove was one of Nixon's favorite films. In the end, Kubrick agreed. The fake footage would be shot in England in the MGM studios near Boreham Wood with a skeleton crew. The 2 technicians and 2 actors would be CIA agents. To guarantee their trustworthiness, all had to be single men without family ties. They would sign a contract committing themselves to perpetual silence about the whole affair. Once the filming was over, they would have to disappear. But Stanley Kubrick was a perfectionist. Faced with the CIA crew's lack of professionalism, he ended up, against his better judgment, supervising the shooting of the fake moonwalk. He told them, "From Monday morning, you're out of my life for good."
My goodness, that is somebody. He is impressive. And he is a balanced, rational man. And he also has some courage to say that, what he'd said. And from there on, it played out exactly as he suggested.
He had very great common sense. He was a very dedicated personality. And my relations with him were wonderful.
And he was very much challenged by this project.
That did take a long time. But everybody was very interested that it could be done at all.
I mean, we have never done this like this. True, yes, we haven't. So that's one reason to try.
They tried and tried and it didn't look right.
You know, why should we question such a sacred achievement by America? Why should you're taking we're taking our arguably greatest achievement and saying it didn't exist? Why should Americans believe you? Why should Americans even analyze this question?
I am devoted to truth.
You lied for 30 years about this. Why didn't you come clean in 75, 74, or whenever? I mean, why did it take 30 years?
Well, not anymore.
Is it your own self-interest that kept you for 30 years, keeping the lie going? I mean, you just...
Yes, pretty much, yes.
Do you think people like yourself were too consumed with their own self-interest to...
Absolutely.
And do you think you'll be forgiven for this? I mean, do you think people will understand? I mean, I'm not sure why you'd be forgiven. You got everything out of this deal.
Don't forgive me.
I'm not asking for forgiveness.
Why did it take 30 years for you to come forward?
Because I'm a flawed individual. I'm not doing this for forgiveness. I'm doing it for my own sense of integrity. No, you could say that's completely selfish, and maybe it is, but I don't think it's selfish. I think that I'm doing this for humanity.
It's like, is that what Eyes Wide Shut refers to? The idea that there is this invisible landscape going on right in front of everyone's faces and everyone ignores it? I mean, what's your greater...
Yes. Don't stop just being delusional. Pay attention, but just look, just see.
But Eyes Wide Shut almost as a title refers not to ignorance, but apathy. I mean, is that really...
Yes, but that's what I'm telling people to abandon.
So Eyes Wide Shut refers to, like, the no monkey see, no, like kind of ignorance of secrets.
It's a contradiction in terms.
Sure. Obviously, yeah.
Obviously, yes.
We have had the wool pulled so clearly over us that we don't even know what's going on.
Of people's eyes seeming to be open.
Like the blind man walking in the place where the furniture's been rearranged, trying to figure out what's going on around here.
Or people not wanting to know the truth.
Exactly.
So is Eyes Wide Shut a reference at all to this whole moon thing? I mean, I heard it's about sexuality.
It's a veiled reference to it, yeah, because it's about truth.
People should take even your work seriously. All your work was enabled largely by this in a way. I mean, this work, from the lens from Barry Lyndon to the access to the budgets to the creative control. I mean, you made a deal with the devil.
Yes, I did. It's not about the sexual underground. It's about truth.
And the search for truth,
Yes, exactly.
Is it about, I mean, Eyes Wide Shut suggests someone's reluctance to even accept the truth.
Exactly.
Do you think, do you think there's people that will watch this, whenever that is, 15 years after, hopefully, your death at a great old age, but do you think there's people that will still not believe? Well, do you think there's people that will believe we went to the moon even with this admission?
Oh, yeah, there's going to be people who believe,
Why will they believe? I mean, here's the man himself who's admitting it, the ultimate credible, I mean, you're a very credible person in the culture. Do you think people
want to believe what they want?
T-minus 18 seconds from liftoff. We're T-minus 15 seconds.
Would you and your men please follow me?
Jerry, what the hell is this?
This is an emergency. Please follow me.
You tell me you're in trouble, you're out on bail, you just got fired, I tell you I'll be right over.
My head hurts.
You look awful.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
These people are capable of anything.
You sound so close. It's hard to believe you really are that far away in space.
It's hard for me to believe it, too.
It's gotten out of control. It's too big.
Capricorn 1, this is Houston. Capricorn 1, we show red on the heat shield. Capricorn 1, this is Houston. We show red on the heat shield. Do you...
Capricorn 1, the mission that never got off the ground.
Go a little to the left and stay there after you move. Okay, so I yell fire when he jumps over that concrete.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy.
I'm sorry, Dave.
But because they are hard.
I'm afraid I can't do that. This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
You know how we've always talked about the possibility of something going wrong with the bomb.
What exactly is the treatment going to be then?
Just going to show you some film.
You little scumbag! I got your name! I got your ass! You will not laugh! You will not cry!
Stop it! Stop it, please! I beg you!
What about Major Kong?
The whole point of the Doomsday Machine is lost. If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
We sat in the Kurova milk bar trying to make up our razoo docs what to do with the evening. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence.
Do you want to die standing up or sitting down?
I want to die like a champion.
You're trying to make me jealous.
If you men only knew.
Is there something bad here?
I think a lot of things happen right here in this particular hotel, and not all of them was good.
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again.
Today, war is too important to be left to politicians.
Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employers?
Goodness comes from within. Goodness is chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man.
And to win. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new, terrifying theater of war.
Bach told me we were in a war, that people died in wars. Well, the first real shots had just been fired. Found out I knew nothing. Over a single night, everything had changed. Washington, D.C., the capital of the free world, felt dangerous and oppressive.
Destination top secret. We believe a UFO has crashed into the moon. We think the Russians are onto it as well.
Well, then you tell NASA to move heaven and earth. We need to get to the moon.
No nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. Man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake.
This country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. Why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we...
Apollo 11 is on the way, riding that pillar of flame from the Saturn V out there 250,000 miles away, where the moon is waiting for man's first arrival.
Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Yeah, have any idea where the is with respect to us?
6 feet, 2.5 now. Big shadow.
Apollo 11, Houston, the S4B is about 6,000 nautical miles from you now, over.
2.5. Contact light. Okay, engine stop.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Get down, Eagle. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're bringing...
That's 400 million persons are watching this broadcast today of the greatest event in our time and one of the great events of all recorded history.
I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's one small step for man.
Fight! Fight! You should get us all. Fight! You should get us all. Fight!
One giant leap for mankind.
Are we good? Yes, sir.
Eagle, we're getting a signal interference. Do you copy?
We now have had confirmation of loss of signal from the Apollo 11. The Apollo 11 is, at the moment, on the far side of the moon.
Neil, you are dark on the rock. Mission is a go. You have 21 minutes.
I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you feel. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. Because of what you have done, we had split man. All the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done. It inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth.
Man has been contaminated. Do not try to rescue him. Repeat, you will not recover him.
Warnings of symptoms caused by the
deadliest flu strain they have ever seen. Testing various antivirals, but at this time,
they are now calling this a true pandemic. 5 years on,
still no cure.
No cure.
このエリアは隔離されてます。They only have enough resources to feed their own population.
Another government collapses as clean water becomes.
大規模な暴動、略奪、暴行。
10 years since the first reported.
We are concerned about the future of humanity.
How many more of us have to die?
Attention. Due to the extremity of the simian flu crisis, all regular government functions have been suspended indefinitely. Attention. Due to the extremity of the simian flu crisis, all regular government functions have been suspended.
I let the American people down. And I have to carry that burden with me for the rest of my life.
You got caught up in something and then it snowballed.
It was my fault. I'm not blaming anybody else.
Now, reading as you've requested
all right,
the thing in the whole context.
Let me just stop you right there. I want to say right here and now, I said things that were not true. I did not have a corrupt motive. There was no cover-up of any criminal activity.
That is obstruction of justice.
Now, just a moment.
Period.
That's your conclusion. I did not commit, in my view, an impeachable offense. I was concerned about whether or not the other side was bucking us. I cut off one arm, then cut off the other. No, I don't interpret that way at all. I can't recall that conversation. I said things that were not true. I brought myself down.
Why didn't you stop it?
I gave them a sword, and they stuck it in, and they twisted it with relish.
Men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. It came in peace for all mankind. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
The flight director says get back in. Jimmy 4, get back in.
There is orange soil. Well, don't move it till I see it.
God bless all of you on the good earth.
This has got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The awesome power, the real-life drama, the incredible wonder of mankind's greatest adventure.
Baby did a bad thing, and I feel like crying. I feel like crying.
I remember the thing with the stars. They had huge sheets of paper and they were little pinholes.
It finally worked, and Kissinger was very, very, very pleased with the result. It looked fantastic.
It's a little bit of a stretch of the imagination.
Hopping over hill and dale. Hopping along.
Очередное разоблачение большой лжи пару лет назад сделает американский режиссер Патрик Мюррей. Он выложит в сеть якобы предсмертное интервью Стэнли Кубрика. В нем человек, похожий на легендарного мастера, признается в том, что видео высадки на Луну — фальшивка.
Я совершил огромное мошенничество, о котором знаю в подробностях, включающее правительство США и НАСА.
Мы связались с Патриком Мюрреем, и тут нас снова ожидал сюрприз. Вокруг лунной миссии американцев все и до сих пор покрыто липкой паутиной лжи.
Сначала я выпустил только 20 минут фильма, потому что так боялся, что никто не поверит, что мой фальшивый Кубрик реален. Так что я подумал, зачем выпускать все видео? Люди через 2 минуты закончат, поняв, что это нереально. Но угадайте что? Почти все поверили, что это реально.
Этот розыгрыш он придумал лишь потому, что сам не верит в успех американской лунной программы.
Верю ли я, что мы, американцы, высаживались на Луну? Абсолютно нет.
Уолтер Каннингем — третий гражданский астронавт НАСА после Нила Армстронга и Элиота Си. К спутнику Земли он летал за год до того исторического визита американцев на Луну.
Этот медальон — это единственная вещь, которая у меня есть и которая была на корабле Аполлон-7.
Готовясь к Рождеству, он с теплотой вспоминает то грандиозное время космических побед в истории Америки.
Самая последняя вещь, которую мы хотели, чтобы кто-то обнаружил, что мы облажались. Мы просто пытались сделать каждую миссию настолько успешной, как могли. Но что могло быть добавлено к нашим усилиям достичь Луны, высадиться на нее и обойти русских? И те, кто в этом успехе сомневаются, я могу сказать, что они глупые люди.
Коллега Каннингема, американский астронавт, участник первой высадки Базз Олдрин, оставил след не только на поверхности Луны, но и на лице американского скептика Барта Сибрелла.
Вы один из тех, кто сказал, что гулял по Луне, когда вы этого не делали. Скажите правду. Скажите это то, что я себя представляю. Вы уйдете прочь с моей дороги? Вы трус и лжец. Базз Олдрин ударил меня, потому что это была правда. Потому что если нет, о чем он так переживал?
Чудак и сторонник теории невероятности Сибрелл предлагает астронавтам НАСА поклясться на Библии, что те были на Луне. Участи исповедоваться на старинной книге не избежал и Нил Армстронг.
Положите вашу руку на Библию, поклянитесь Богу, что вы гуляли по Луне. Мистер Сибрелл, это, вероятно, фальшивая Библия.
Но вот что странно, все астронавты бегут от Сибрелла, словно черт от ладана. И как тут не поверить в теорию лунного заговора?
Все знают, что миссия на Луну была фальшивой.
Что если и сам президент Трамп не верит в успешную миссию, и, может быть, поэтому решил открыть новую лунную программу? На эту мысль скептика Сибрелла наталкивает заявление советника американского президента.
Прилунение Аполлона — самый большой обман в истории человечества, даже хуже, чем вся бессмыслица глобального потепления. Если они были на Луне в первую попытку в 1969-м, они бы уже попали на Марс десятилетия назад. Так что тот факт, что они должны возвратиться на Луну, доказательство того, что они никогда там не были.
Так что даже если американцы и не были на Луне, то теперь благодаря Трампу точно будут. Хотя лучше бы Дональд больше никого не слушал, а то ведь могут такого насоветовать.
Алексей Семакин, Ксения Абрамова и Ярослав Филатов. Центральное телевидение.
Ну, я так понимаю, Алексей Семакин...
Ambrose Chappell, ex-CIA agent, refused to take part in the mission.
He retired from the service and later became a pastor in Baltimore.
30 years later, I think it's time to bring an end to this story. Kubrick is no longer with us, and I think it's all right to tell.
Ask the Soviets whether it's true or not. They had the means to find out. Dmitry Muffley had worked for the Soviet Secret Services for 15 years before being exchanged for another renegade when the Berlin Wall fell.
What really surprised us was a number of mistakes the White House made. They wouldn't have fooled a kid of 10. We soon realized the whole thing was a hoax. It took us less than 2 hours to figure out the photographs. Take the American flag, which is shown suspended in midair and waving this way and that. But there's no wind on the moon. The camera used on the moon was a Hasselblad 500 of excellent design and quality, but with no special modifications or cover. 2 hours, the temperature went from plus 130 degrees to minus 150 degrees. The astronauts are lit from behind, but the smallest details of their spacesuits are perfectly visible. The very first thing you learn in photography is not to shoot against the light. You've got to have your back to the sun to get the best shots.
On the Apollo 11 mission, Muffley pointed out, everything went perfectly according to plan, except for one thing. There were no pictures. But everything depended on these pictures, eagerly awaited all around the world. Muffley showed us 2 photos from the end of a reel of film which had never been developed. They had been slumbering away in NASA's archives. On the first, the shadows make no sense, spreading in all directions. On the second, a photograph of Stanley Kubrick, taken during the filming of 2001, can be seen left abandoned on the studio's fake lunar surface.
And I think it's all right to tell, to reveal this secret. The men who participated in this project were all paid very well. They promised secrecy, and they promised to disappear forever. They were given new identities and new faces and new lives in some remote place in the world. But then Nixon and his advisors got scared, and they began to think that disappear forever should mean just that.
In the White House, Nixon had been unable to sleep for months. He seemed distracted, unable to concentrate. What if one of the witnesses to the filming decides to talk? We can't take the risk, he kept repeating to his advisors. Nixon asked his national security advisor, Colonel George Kaplan, for advice. Let's send one of our best CIA guys and get rid of him.
The president was determined to do something. And I said to him, look, you're going to do what you want to do, but I think it's too late. I think you should have done that a year ago. It is not a good thing to do.
And I said, are you out of your mind? I said, this is going to turn into the biggest scandal that this country has ever seen.
Nixon decided to cancel the operation, and he told Kissinger and Alexander Haig. But the machine was about to go out of control. During the night, Colonel Kaplan sent one of his CIA deputies to the Oval Office to get the list of those to be eliminated. It was already too late.
George, on that thing we were discussing this morning, I wanted to be sure that you got off a telephone call, preferably, a message if necessary.
The first time we heard that there was a problem was on Tuesday morning.
So I went into Nixon and I said, Mr. President, we've got a problem.
But it never crossed my mind that it would fall apart so fast. And talked. And
why did they have to fake it?
He had made a number of decisions already.
Okay, retro, go.
The director of the CIA was looking panicked.
So I'm just saying, why?
The Russians will put a man on the moon.
Guys, go!
It's only a matter of months, maybe even days.
I said to the president then.
I have very accurate information about that.
I said,
why would the government need to do something like that?
You can't let this succeed.
We can't wait another year.
Roll, go.
You must do everything necessary to make sure that it doesn't.
We have to launch Apollo 11 as soon as we can.
Come, go.
Now, the president turned to his experts at NASA and said,
Ginsey, go.
Are we ready?
Come, go. Surgeon.
The director of the space agency only half reassured him.
Because it is impossible.
Well, President Nixon refused that idea. No way.
It is impossible.
The whole world is waiting to see an American
get to the moon.
5.
It's impossible to go.
2 billion TV viewers got ready to watch man's first steps on the moon.
Go.
Launch Complex 39 was cleared, and we began to load liquid propellant into the launch vehicle.
Ignition sequence start.
Liftoff. First, he complimented me on 2001, which was nice to hear.
At the beginning.
2001. 2001.
The Space Odyssey.
And he said, speaking of space, which was nice to hear. And he said,
he was a great filmmaker.
Anyway, he complimented me on 2001, and then he said, speaking of space.
And they all looked at me like I was nuts.
He told me about the plan. He said, you know about President Kennedy's prediction of going to the moon by the end of the decade.
Well, it was almost like a mandate. Like he sort of like, you know, threw the gauntlet down.
And he said, well, time is running out, and we want to do that, but we can't. It's impossible. We tried. We've been testing this for years. As you may have heard, there was a launch pad accident in 1967 in which the famous Gus Grissom was killed and 2 other astronauts. Gus was a good guy, but anyway, and it can't be done. We talked to every scientist imaginable. It just cannot be done. But after seeing your film, I am convinced, and the gentlemen at NASA are also convinced, that you can help us make people believe that we have been to the moon and back.
And you must have been startled at that moment. Okay.
Actually, a little bit, but I also knew where this was going, and I thought, what a trip. What a trip this is for me, as an artist.
Okay, you were still young and wide-eyed.
I couldn't help it.
Okay.
It's part of being, it's like the, it's the DNA or something of an artist.
Like your adrenaline got going.
Yes.
Your juice is flowing. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
And I was excited.
All right,
he
go
didn't
on.
even have to finish, but he did. And explained to me that he wanted me to film a fake landing with fake astronauts, well, not real astronauts, but faking the exploration of space.
Because they just knew they couldn't get there.
Because there was just no way we could get there.
Because they just knew they couldn't get there.
Because there was just no way we could get there.
And the political, I mean, they'd spent all that money, I guess. And
yes.
There was a political brinksmanship going on.
Of course, Nixon wanted to make a big splash. It was early in his presidency.
Yeah, that would have made him look really like a failure.
He wanted to, he wanted his approval points up. And he thought nothing could do it better than this. To fulfill this dream that America has had as a country since the Kennedy years.
And the political, I mean, they'd spent all that money, I guess. And
yes.
There was a political brinksmanship going on.
Of course, Nixon wanted to make a big splash. It was early in his presidency.
Yeah, that would have made him look really like a failure.
He wanted to, he wanted his approval points up. And he thought nothing could do it better than this. To fulfill this dream that America has had as a country since the Kennedy years.
Okay, so you're saying the motivation was PR?
PR, absolutely. Plain and simple, okay. PR.
Okay, so you're saying the motivation was PR?
PR, absolutely. Plain and simple, okay. PR.
All right. And the geopolitical chess match between Russia that was going on, it would have weakened their position, so to speak.
Yes.
And I guess
that
money.
Was background. That was great background for the story. Yes.
But it also, it must have been about
because there was still
money,
a red fear, a communist fear among the people.
Right. Sure. That was right. You're kind of yeah. Sure. I mean, missile crisis and all that. Okay. But it's also really about like anything else about money. I mean, they'd spent. Well, the equivalent of $1 billion, almost $1 trillion of our dollars now on this program.
Yes, in addition to being impossible and unsafe, it was also terribly expensive.
But no, what I'm saying is that it was so expensive that to fail would not, quote unquote, not be an option. In other words, at a certain point, you spend so much taxpayer money. My question I'm asking is Nixon motivated, whoever these men that decided this to perpetrate this fraud, was it the money? In other words, if you can't go to the, or maybe you can, I don't know. Can you go to the American people after spending $1 trillion and say, we've got nothing to show for it?
No.
So
obviously.
But I'm saying is how much of that was the motivation?
Of course, that was a huge part of it. A huge part of it. I think this was hard for him to get out, this next part. But he said the NASA's funds are just drying up.
He goes in for the big close and he says, you got to do it. And he guilts you about merit patriotism?
Has to save NASA.
Okay.
It was in deep trouble. And this was...
Why was it in deep trouble?
Just spent so damn much money. Billions and billions of dollars. This would save them. This great PR would save them. It was hard for him to say this next part. He was looking into his drink kind of like I am now. And finally he said that we can't tell people the truth, that we can't get to the moon. It would be disastrous for NASA. Their funding would dry up. People wouldn't have faith in them anymore. It would be like
in faith, it would be over,
failure.
right? It would be over.
Yes, it would be absolutely over. So if we fake this moon landing, it would do nothing but increase the reputation. And it was obviously something I never expected, and I was blown away. And yes, I was also much younger than I am now, and I was on a bit of an ego trip of my own.
And what did they say? And how did they put it to you? I mean, what was their pitch? I mean, what is it? What got you? Something must have got you. I mean, or did you say yes right away? I mean, how did it go?
Well, yeah, they dangled some fruit in front of me, you know, and I grabbed it.
But
I told you about the promises.
Right. But what moral problem? I mean, right away you knew it was a lie. But
no, I didn't right away. I was too overwhelmed. I was too blown away, simply blown away by the privilege of it, the challenge of it, the honor of it.
Okay, I guess it was flattering to be
yes,
the only.
Absolutely. You can't imagine. You just cannot imagine.
So they came to you and said, "Oh, you're the greatest."
Until later. Because to me it was the fucking ultimate challenge.
It is. I mean, because film.
If I could fool people with this, then I am the greatest film artist of the 20th century.
Or any century. I mean,
no,
in a way, it's taking film to the meta level. There's documentary, there's fiction. We know documentaries are real. We know fictions are fake. We suspend disbelief.
Parallel with this.
But that's my point. It's like the ultimate hybrid.
That's my point exactly. There is nothing parallel with it.
So creatively and artistically, you saw this sort of a once in a many lifetime opportunity to play with all these billions of dollars to make the ultimate movie that no one even knew was a movie.
Right. Certainly. Certainly in that century.
All right. And the geopolitical chess match between Russia that was going on, it would have weakened their position, so to speak.
Yes.
And I guess
that
money.
Was background. That was great background for the story. Yes.
There's also, it must have been about
because there was still
money.
a red fear, a communist fear among the people.
Right. Sure. That was right. You're kind of yeah. Sure. I mean, missile crisis and all that. Okay. But it's also really about, like anything else, about money. I mean, they'd spent, the equivalent of $1 billion, almost $1 trillion of our dollars now on this program.
Yes. In addition to being impossible and unsafe, it was also terribly expensive.
But what I'm saying is that it was so expensive that to fail would not, quote unquote, not be an option. In other words, at a certain point, you spend so much taxpayer money. My question I'm asking is is Nixon motivated, whoever these men that decided this to perpetrate this fraud, was it the money? In other words, if you can't go to or maybe you can, I don't know. Can you go to the American people after spending $1 trillion and say, we got nothing to show for it?
No.
So
obviously.
But I'm saying is how much of that was the motivation?
Of course, that was a huge part of it. A huge part of it. It was hard for him to say this next part. He was. I think this was hard for him to get out. Finally, he said that we can't tell people the truth, that we can't get to the moon. It would be disastrous for NASA. Their funding would dry up. People wouldn't have faith in them anymore. It would be like
in faith, it would be over,
failure.
right? It would be over.
Yes, it would be absolutely over. So if we fake this moon landing, it would do nothing but increase the reputation. You know, looked at his drink kind of like this and said, we have to fake this. We have to fake this moon landing, just to keep interest in NASA, and in the next few years, we might actually be able to go for real.
Come on.
We wouldn't give up. We'd still work on it. We would still be working on it, trying to make this trip possible. But we have to do it now. If we didn't fake this, if we didn't lie about it, eventually people would lose interest, and the funding would dry up for NASA. It would just cease to exist.
The dream.
And the dream would be dead. It would be gone. The greatest thing in the world for this country would be to go to the moon. And that being gone, it would be just devastating for the national mood. It was about morale. It was about money. It was about money. It was about morale. Chiefly money, as most things are.
So you're an expert in photography, clearly, and you cinematography. So you're telling me that, like 2001, the moon landings were no different, essentially, except we know that 2001's a story in the fiction. But you're essentially saying you went from one space set, to another space set? I mean, what was that like? I mean, what was the experience like doing it?
2001 was great training for the moon landing fakery.
You looked at me and said yes.
You know about President Kennedy's prediction of going to the moon by the end of the decade.
An additional risk by making it in full view of the world. This very risk enhances our stature.
We're going to find that
when we are successful.
Rather difficult.
To fulfill this dream that America has had as a country since the Kennedy years.
The United States of America was absolutely terrified about the fact that the Russians would have these enormous, powerful rockets.
It was all part of the missile thing. The propulsion behind a moon rocket and a missile was pretty much the same thing.
I remember when Charles was born, we went out and got crocked again. The two of us, Captain Terrific and the Mad Doctor, talking about reaching the stars. And the bartender telling us maybe we'd had enough.
Well, time is running out, and we want to do that.
We need a 10 to 12 year program.
Nixon, this next part was hard for him to say.
I commissioned last year a study of this project.
He looked at his drink kind of like this and said,
the findings of the report. My conclusion was that
we have to fake this. We have to fake this moon landing.
This idea was not practical.
So if we fake this moon landing, keep interest in NASA, and it would do nothing but increase the reputation. And if we didn't fake this, if we didn't lie about it, eventually people would lose interest, and the funding would dry up for NASA.
There's no way.
By the way,
it's impossible today.
But we have to do it now.
for reasons which at this moment must be all too obvious.
In the next few years, we might actually be able to go for real.
Do you think it might help us to maybe solve some of our less exotic problems here at home?
On it, we would still be working on it, trying to make this trip possible.
On Earth?
Because we were so damn close. We had to do it now.
All right, you are go.
Nixon wanted to make a big splash.
That has as its ultimate goal the manned domination of space.
It was early in his presidency.
And if we don't, we're going to be in trouble.
I remember when Glenn made his first orbit in Mercury. They put up television sets in Grand Central Station, and tens of thousands of people missed their trains to watch.
And when they realize...
But we can't. It's impossible.
It's going to go 100% failure.
Because
it can only be attributable to human error.
There was just no way.
There was no possibility
we could get there.
And it will stay that way.
Think the moon landing is real? No, I don't. No.
We tried.
Do you? Yeah.
We've been testing this for years.
Why do you think the moon landing is real? Why don't you tell me why? I saw it on television. Oh, you're a genius. Oh, beep that.
As you may have heard,
there's been only 7 trips ever that human beings have ever gone past 400 miles.
We can't afford another screw-up.
There was a, if you might remember...
Every single space station mission, every space shuttle, every satellite, all of those are inside the protective Van Allen radiation belt.
The furthest anyone has ever been off this planet is 400 miles.
On the moon's south pole.
Wow.
The moon is several hundred
it's a quarter million
miles away.
You can see almost perpetual sunlight on the horizon.
My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion.
In other words, please be true.
Why?
But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
If you got outside of that band, you have to deal with solar cycles. There's the apex of a 20-year solar cycle was between 1969 and 1972. All the time when these guys are making those missions.
Conditions on the moon are very different from those on Earth.
With humans on board to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. The moon, Mars, the moon's asteroids. The moon, a lot of...
It wasn't possible in 1969.
We're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
It's not possible now.
Planet Earth is protected by the atmosphere.
And unsafe.
The astronauts, I mean... Those guys are afraid of their lives. This is a matter of life and death.
What's the problem?
There was a launch pad accident.
Any one of those guys out there in those tiny little aluminum shielded crafts, Gus Grissom.
In 1967, in which
Gus Grissom,
the famous Gus Grissom,
had placed the lemon on the Apollo capsule.
He put a lemon, he hung it on the simulator, put a lemon and put it on a hanger and hung it.
He was killed, and 2 other astronauts
would have been killed instantly during any solar flare. He was dead in that same cockpit. He died like 2 weeks later.
And he was telling his family that there was no way. He was disgusted and thinking of quitting.
He burned to death inside of that. They were terrified.
Gus was a good guy.
He was a public critic of NASA.
But anyway.
So there's no way this is being run by a bunch of idiots.
In addition to being impossible.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's just not possible.
Orion caps
the layer of air and gas that surrounds it. The atmosphere shields the Earth from solar radiation, keeps the temperature balanced, and protects us from meteoroids.
These guys were in the middle of a huge Cold War between Russia.
In the end, we could not keep up with the expense involved in space race.
And the political, I mean, they'd spent all that money, I guess. And
yes.
There was a political brinksmanship going on.
I can no longer sit back and allow
The geopolitical chess match between Russia that was going on, it would have weakened their position, so to speak.
communist infiltration,
Yes.
communist indoctrination,
Yes.
communist subversion,
That was a great background for the story, yeah.
and the international communist conspiracy
There was still a red fear,
to sap and impurify
a communist fear among the people.
all of our precious bodily fluids.
I mean, missile crisis and all that.
They wanted to show that America had technological superiority.
Do we have anything like that in the works? A moment, please, Mr. President.
They felt they were made more glamorous.
Yeah.
They became very aware how important the visual spectacle is going to be.
When I first went to see 2001, I was blown away.
It was a great film, wonderfully done, super special effects and music, and a great story by Arthur C. Clarke.
There is no question at all that the designers and engineers of the space program have been affected by 2001.
2001: A Space Odyssey was also a visionary film. Kubrick's real achievement was the fact that not a single scene was criticized by NASA engineers for lack of authenticity. The images of the spaceship Discovery on its way through the solar system were stupefying.
It was absolutely fascinating. They looked nearly exactly the same. It had a pointed top, it went down like this, and it had the engine in the back.
The influence of 2001 on the whole space program would be colossal. Kubrick's science fiction vision of the cosmos would speed up space exploration and give a shot in the arm to the race to the moon. Fascinated by the early rushes of the film, NASA technicians modified the astronauts' spacesuits, adding liberal touches of color.
NASA was so impressed by the spacesuits that they did certain things that they hadn't done before. I couldn't tell you what they did, but I remember at the time Stanley was very flattered.
Some of the ideas were similar, not because we were imitating what was done in 2001, but just because looking for new ideas, people working at the same time came up with some of the same solutions.
I remember he was very proud when all sorts of people said how accurate it was.
It affected our thinking and our processes and the final product.
Stanley and Arthur talked about it, and they felt like stars.
Guidance is internal. 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. Oxidizer tanks in the second and third stages now have pressurized. Neil Armstrong reported we know it will be a good flight.
The way all our preparations were kept under such tight security.
Launch commit.
Liftoff.
Liftoff.
With my help. With my aid. And it is bothering me.
Okay, back up. All right.
You're telling me why me? Why not? Why not CNN? Is that so? That's the 15-year thing. So that makes sense now. That's why I can't release it for 15 years. That makes total sense now.
Yeah. I only have this certain amount of time with you, and I'll talk about whatever you want. You know, this isn't some type of joke or
No, it's not
film
joke.
within a film thing.
Not a joke. Nope.
Okay.
The conspiracy theorists were right on this occasion.
Why in God's name would... I don't know what to ask you first. If you're telling the truth, why would you do it? Why the hell did you do this?
I didn't want to do it. It just was... It was against my principles.
Loud and clear now, Mike, and we understand that you are a doctor. That's right. TV looks really great.
I thought it was wrong.
11, you got a pretty big audience.
I didn't believe in perpetrating a fraud like that.
It was like perfect. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings.
But you did.
Capcom, we're go for landing. Eagle, you're looking great. The Eagle has landed. And we're getting a picture on the TV.
It also undermined my artistic integrity to do that.
Stand by for mode 1, Charlie.
Okay. But you ended up saying yes.
11 Houston, thrust is go.
Why?
All engines, you're looking good. Okay, ready for me to come out?
Well, yeah.
Became in peace with all mankind.
Because...
Hi, Roger, you're loud and clear.
Basically...
Yes, indeed. They got the flag up now.
I was bribed.
Magnificent desolation. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man.
To put it bluntly, that's what it was.
Houston, Roger, well done.
It was just a plain fucking bribe.
Very quiet ride. Everything's looking good.
I wanted the...
Roger, we got you coming home. Good night from Apollo 11.
Orion 3 reported a visual contact.
I mean, I just...
Plan Michael is 841.
You know...
Roger, Tower. That is on the way up. Saturn gave us a...
We choose to go to the moon in this decade.
I sold out.
And do the other things.
I was a fucking whore.
Not because they are easy.
Why is it important for somebody to take even this, consider that this might be truthful?
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner.
But someone could say, you know what, this guy's off his meds. He's going senile.
That you're a degenerate.
Stanley Kubrick's lost his marbles.
Sadistic old man.
Should we question such a...
And you can go to hell!
...sacred achievement?
Before I apologize to you now!
Taking our arguably greatest achievement and saying it didn't exist.
Forever again!
I am devoted to truth.
Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment...
Why did it take 30 years?
...about my responsibility?
Why didn't you come clean in, 75, 74, or whenever?
We're coming up on T-minus 32 minutes, 21 seconds.
Lied for 30 years about this.
Mark. At the present time, all systems are go. All lights are green.
The rumors have been growing for years.
10 seconds.
If Nixon was cold-bloodedly prepared to send these 3 astronauts to their death.
9.
What credence can we give to those first steps on the moon which so entranced the whole of humanity?
8.
Have you never wondered why the President of the United States was not present at the launch of Apollo 11?
We have ignition.
There's no question that the military push...
6.
One would have to be exceptionally naive to believe that several billions of dollars were spent just to get a few pounds of lunar rock.
5.
The Apollo program was in fact the early stages of what was later to become Star Wars, the missile shield for defending the United States.
We have outboard engines.
But it would have been impossible to make Congress cough up so much money without the support of public opinion. When it came to a moon landing, everyone said yes, and without hesitation.
That's why the Congress allocated these funds, and that's why NASA has been giving this mandate, so this must happen. We must go to the moon before the Russians.
Unimaginable sums were swallowed up during this race to the moon, with the general approval of the public. The entire enormous machine was at the disposal of the politicians and financiers. All that remained was to convince the general public that the conquest of space was a peaceful enterprise.
3, we have inboard engines. 1, 0, we have a launch commit. We have a liftoff at 35 minutes after the hour.
Goodness comes from within.
Well, not anymore.
Step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant.
Disorientated by his sudden fame, Neil Armstrong withdrew to a monastery. David Bowman was in the Houston Space Center that famous evening of the first steps on the moon. He remembers Armstrong.
They gave him the script the day before in a sealed envelope. That famous phrase that he would say when he landed on the moon. He read the script in front of us. One small step for man, one great leap for mankind. He looked up and said, "Who wrote that crap?"
So when I got to the cafeteria, that asshole tells me, "You got 2 side orders. I gotta charge you $2 extra. $2 extra for a handful of beans." See, with Betty, it's comfortable, it's secure, but with Samantha, it's the unknown. It's like an adventure.
There were some unusual things that happened that were a bit surprising and influenced my life.
Nixon was prepared for the worst. On the eve of Apollo 11's launch, he'd secretly recorded a televised message announcing the death of the 3 astronauts.
Yesterday, I laid a wreath at the cemetery.
On January the 1st, 2001, Christian Kubrick began looking through the late director's archives.
It was around the time of the release of Full Metal Jacket that rumours of Kubrick's apparent eccentric, reclusive behaviour began appearing in the papers.
Between being an artistic perfectionist and being a barking loon.
And we are all about to witness.
Stanley has clearly crossed that line.
The fulfillment of that promise that President Kennedy made.
And then some.
Launch Complex 39 was cleared and we began to load liquid propellant into the launch vehicle.
So you
ever thought
feel bad about this, clearly.
For a single solitary moment.
I do feel bad about it.
About my responsibility.
I also feel proud of it. It's a terrible conflict.
Wow. I mean...
I think a lot of things happened right here in this particular hotel, and not all of them was good.
Is that because of the stress of this?
Of course.
I apologize.
Stress, guilt, just conflict of all kinds.
Today, war is too important to be left to politicians.
This was sort of amateur CIA, if there ever was one.
Some of this was not done very well, and who planned it, I never inquired. I just stayed away from it.
I must say, it was a very poorly run show.
The Secretary General called me and said, "What's going on?"
In the White House, Nixon celebrated his birthday with a few friends. Later in the evening, as he was dining with his wife in a Chinese restaurant, the president was given a note informing him of the operation's failure. He now decided to change his methods.
We had people who knew how to do those things.
Presidents, under the pressure of office, have to do a lot of dumb things sometimes.
Nixon drank, and Not a lot, but he was one of these people that one drink and...
Nixon used all the means at his disposal. 150,000 men and half the 6th Fleet were sent in search of the 4 fugitives. Twice what was used during the Gulf War to try to capture Saddam Hussein. The CIA asked the Pentagon to show a little more discretion and use a method which had been tried and tested in Asia and Latin America, dressing up murders to look like accidents.
And it was ending in a somewhat ignominious fashion.
The sound man, Andy Rogers, was burned alive in a car crash. Jim Gow, the assistant director, was found drowned in a swimming pool in his backyard. Vince Brown was found in Patagonia, cut up in little pieces, but the police claimed it was a suicide.
Vince Brown, the assistant director, was tracked down and killed in the Kerguelen Islands. The CIA's cynicism was such that they even filmed his murder.
Bob Stein, the set designer, figured out what was happening and hid in a yeshiva in Brooklyn for 10 years until they caught up with him.
It was in this yeshiva in a Jewish neighborhood of New York that Rabbi Königsberg protected Bob Stein for many years, at the same time teaching him Yiddish. The two of them scoured the Bible for answers to their questions, but the rabbi soon began to have doubts about Bob Stein, who not only didn't believe in God, but even had trouble believing in his own existence.
Oft haben wir diskutiert, kiemat jeden Abend. Es ist mir schnell angefallen, als fremd ist schon nicht. Hat gehalten, als in der Teure steht geschrieben, als man darf bloß Achtung geben, in welchem Restaurant man isst Chaser. Gearbeitet hat nicht, gelebt auf der Ducke. Bis amul haben ihm gehabt, der Band Chuliganes im Bronx. Sehen dich als Resayit, haben sie ihm gezwungen, seit sie Zitzeneien, die zerrissene Häusen. In hintergehackte Sachen, gelost Fahrteuten. 6 Monate ist er gelegen in Mount Sinai Hospital. Bis er da weggestorben.
Henry Kissinger, Donald Rumsfeld, the White House and the CIA had promised Stanley Kubrick he would never hear from them again. They kept their word. But 5 years after the fake footage had been shot, Kubrick was imprudent enough to contact the White House and then NASA to ask to borrow a special lens for the filming of Barry Lyndon. NASA agreed in exchange for services rendered, or perhaps it capitulated to the barely veiled threat of revelations about Armstrong and Aldrin's first steps on the moon. Nixon had resigned following Watergate, but his successor, urged on by the CIA's new director, got the machine up and running again. After all, Stanley Kubrick was the last direct witness of the hoax still living. His telephone was bugged and his mail was intercepted. Kubrick decided to disappear. He made all his films on or near his property, whether the setting was Vietnam or New York. He locked himself away with his wife and children and never went out again until his death.
He was accusing Nixon of colluding with the CIA to have him assassinated.
He would try to think what they would do and how the troops would go in and at what point and how long it would take. He was very accurate. And at the same time, he also was horrified.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The guy that ran CIA was Dick Walters, General Dick Walters, one of my best friends, and I know what was going on.
Only General Walters could reveal the whole truth about this. The whole truth about what? Listen to me now and believe me, because I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm positive that Mr. Nixon knew nothing in advance. Helms's deputy said to him, "I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever goes down, we'll be with you till the end." That was 6 months before. When the people who did it were trapped, they hurried to Nixon to say, "Protect us." Instead, and I said this to Mr. Nixon, and he agreed with me when I told him, General Walters was willing to go on talking, but in private, without being filmed. The elimination of all those who'd taken part in the filming, and he insisted on the word all, was still too sensitive a subject. Before tackling the subject of Stanley Kubrick's sudden demise, he asked us to switch off our camera, which we half did. Are you still filming? Because this could mean people's lives. General Walters, visibly disturbed, suggested carrying on our conversation the following day, but he died suddenly during the night of a stroke. He had agreed to break one of the CIA's explicit rules, that of silence and anonymity. Vernon Walters' death only warranted a few lines in Libération, but the New York Herald Tribune devoted a long article to him. Part of it read, General Walters' last known public appearance was on a French television documentary in which he talked about the White House's involvement with the Apollo program in the late 1960s. Both the producer and the director noted that Walters was in perfect shape.
No way people went on the moon.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Why fake it? They wanted to win the Cold War. The Soviet Union's had over 10 firsts in space.
He sat there 2 months ago and put his feet up on Woodrow Wilson's desk.
First man in space, first woman in space, first they had everything. First dog in space, they had first satellite. They were so much more advanced than the Americans were.
And he said, Jim, make it good.
This is Capricorn 1. We have landed.
As millions all over the world watched and listened, the President of the United States spoke to the astronauts across the vastness of space.
I bring you greetings from your fellow Americans.
It's also really about, like anything else, about money.
There's only one small catch.
I mean, they'd spent, well, the equivalent of $1 billion, almost $1 trillion of our dollars now on this program.
It never happened. It's all a lie.
Yes.
A fantastic $30 billion hoax.
It was also terribly expensive.
So there we are, after all those hopes and all that dreaming.
Because we were so damn close.
He sits there with those flags behind his chair and tells me we can't afford a screw-up.
The Americans were more advanced in trickery, and that's what they did. They figured out a way to fake it.
Congress is on my back. They're looking for a reason to cancel the program.
He said the NASA's funds are just drying up. Just spent so damn much money.
Then suddenly everybody started talking about how much everything costs.
Money!
Was it really worth $20 billion to go to another planet?
It's a gas. A huge part of it.
What about cancer? What about the slums? How much does it cost?
Morale, it was about money. It was about money, as most things are.
Money! How much does any dream cost, for Christ's sake?
I'm on right, Jack. Keep your hands off of my stack.
So expensive that to fail would not, quote unquote, not be an option.
And I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
At a certain point, you spend so much taxpayer money.
Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash.
My question I'm asking is, whoever these men that decided this to perpetrate this fraud,
mainly Nixon.
Can you go to the American people after spending $1 trillion and say, we've got nothing to show for it?
No.
There will be only one course of action open.
And guess what? We had a screw-up. A first-class, bona fide, made-in-America screw-up.
Right,
he didn't even have to finish, but he did.
We found out 2 months ago it won't work.
Like, if you could look at me because of the lighting, I don't want you to go into the darkness because I'm lighting you sort of.
I didn't even know you were over there, but okay.
Okay, well, you know, this isn't some type of joke or...
No, it's not.
Film within a film thing.
Not a joke. Nope.
Okay.
The conspiracy theorists were right on this occasion.
Why?
Get the president out of the way and hire Stanley Kubrick.
Just, how about you walk me through it?
Stanley Kubrick,
I was contacted before I started making 2001.
the man who created 2001, you kind of wonder if he made a deal.
Under the Masonic moon.
And
When he was brought into it,
After Kennedy said his thing, you're saying?
how the deal was made.
Why are you telling me?
A massive fraud.
We are still
An unparalleled fraud
with Apollo 11.
perpetrated against them.
Unit going to internal power.
They should know.
I understand.
Why in God's name?
Thank you for telling me the truth.
Don't you think it's important for people to know the truth?
You deserve it.
And we are all about to witness the fulfillment of that promise that President Kennedy made.
It's about the ability to do things with military technology. All that stuff they use for NASA, all the stuff they use for the stealth bomber, the space shuttle, all those missions, that's to fuel the military-industrial complex.
it's no secret that NASA always wanted to fulfill this Kennedy prophecy.
We choose to go to the moon.
Landing a man on the moon.
In this decade.
This decade is out.
And do the other things.
And returning him safely to the earth.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Take us back to the beginning.
The way all our preparations were kept under such tight security.
That we didn't land on the moon, you're saying?
No, we didn't.
Every split second of this historic flight.
If we are successfully able to execute a touchdown and return.
11.
The moon landing in 69,
12.
which was 2 years before my birth.
10.
Total fiction.
9.
Total fiction.
To facilitate the broadcast media, we will precede each announcement with a 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
Why would the government ever want or need to do? Why would the government need to do something like that?
9. We have ignition.
Because it is impossible
6.
to get to the moon.
5.
It's impossible to go.
Chaos flight controllers going around the hall.
Okay, retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Com, go. GNC, go. Econ, go. Surgeon, go.
Capcom, we're...
Why did they have to fake it?
So I'm just saying,
Why?
why would the government need to do something like that? Why would the government ever want or need to do? Why would the government need to do something like that?
9. We have ignition.
Because it is impossible
6.
to get to the moon.
5.
It's impossible to go.
11.
The moon landing in 69,
12.
which was 2 years before my birth.
10.
Total fiction.
9.
10 seconds. 9.
Total fiction.
8. We have ignition. 6. 5. We have outboard engines. 3. We have inboard engines. 1. 0. We have a launch commit. We have a liftoff at 35 minutes after the hour.
Liftoff.
With my help. With my aid. And it is bothering me.
Take us back to the beginning.
The way all our preparations were kept under such tight security.
That we didn't land on the moon, you're saying?
No, we didn't.
Why did they have to fake it?
So I'm just saying,
Why?
why would the government need to do something like that?
Because it is impossible to get
To the moon.
I'm sorry.
In this decade.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Because they are hard.
It's a little bit of a stretch of the imagination.
1.
Liftoff.
Liftoff.
With my help. With my aid. And it is bothering me.
Okay, back up.
Why me? Why not CNN?
So you were manipulated.
I was manipulated, but as my wife said,
We've got it.
I made the choice.
And explain to me,
It's as simple as that.
it would just cease to exist. And the dream would be dead. It would be gone.
Holy mother of fuck. 10 seconds. 9.
I can see you're really upset about this.
8. We have ignition.
That he wanted me to
Make it good. You have my every good wish.
I honestly think you...
6.
Film.
Want to sit down calmly.
5. We...
This.
Take the stress pill and think things over.
We have outboard engine.
Fake moon landing. Because we were so damn close.
What happens there? You're on set, and you got to make a movie that no one knows is a movie.
You saw this sort of a once in a many lifetime opportunity.
That's one small step for man.
About
no one knows it's a fiction movie.
Right. Well, they don't think it's a movie. They think it's live television programming. But you're faking live television.
One giant pursuit for mankind.
See, it even confuses me sometimes.
Well, it's meta layered.
Now that you've had your career
and
you're looking in the rearview mirror of it, you have all the money.
That being gone,
you have all the press, and you've gotten all your awards.
It would be just devastating.
And everyone thinks you're the biggest genius ever.
For the national mood.
Why is it that now you've gotten a conscience, or now you've got morality?
Are you fucking believing this? Over. 3.
What if the most important event in recent history?
The fucking moon. Over.
The crew is now in the gantry access arm.
Thank you very much.
The greatest thing in the world for this country would be to go to the moon.
Well, is there a certain film that you would change?
Fill my heart with song.
Or something about your career, or what is it?
Well, Spartacus.
Okay.
Because I allowed Kirk Douglas to just have too much control and power.
Was that a political issue, or
up to the hole in his chin with just ego?
Let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore.
Fantastic!
In other words,
why? What is it that's changed in 30 years? Why did it take 30 years for you to come forward? What knocked you in your head?
What would I say now, knowing what I know now?
Right. And what do you know now?
Because I'm a flawed individual.
When you look at your incredible body of work, you must be very proud. I mean, as you sit here.
Yes, but of course, like most perfectionists, I often wish I could have done things differently.
Like what? I mean, people think your films are the best films ever made by an American filmmaker. I mean, what were some of the? I mean, well, then, if you would, can you tell me about the experience of doing this? I mean, was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience while you were doing it?
At the time, to me it was another job. It was very challenging.
It was the ultimate challenge to pull it. That was the moral dilemma. Is that you to do it right, you had to fake everyone, but to do it right meant you had to be the worst, the best liar. So let's talk about these conflicts, okay?
Right.
This motion picture was produced to enable you to experience more personally and vividly.
So you're saying the reason why you're one of the few, or if only, filmmaker in Hollywood that enjoys Final Cut and virtually no studio interference is because of
my cooperation with the government.
Like a deal with the devil.
Yes, it's Faustian to be sure.
And is that why you got such power in Hollywood? I mean, that would explain that.
Why I have the freedom I have, that was part of it, yes. When I made Spartacus, I didn't have this kind of freedom. But I have it now.
Millions all over the world watched and listened.
So doing it, what was the process of doing it like?
The most dramatic events of the Apollo 11 story.
What was it like just making another film?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Well,
the pictures and sounds are real.
Every film is a challenge.
Houston is monitoring the actual flight.
But this was the supreme challenge.
Recorded in real time.
Why?
All the telemetry is coming from the command module. So are your voices and your medical data. We recorded everything from the practice simulations.
Because it was absolutely necessary.
Where the action really was.
Not only that people believe it, but they believe it in spite of.
So, come with us.
The facts.
Who knows about this? Almost nobody.
At ABC Space Headquarters in New York.
Okay.
Everything I was filming was a lie.
We are going to the moon.
On a grand scale.
Almost nobody.
At ABC Space Headquarters in New York.
And it was such a, for lack of a better word, a rush, an artistic, aesthetic rush, that the morality of it hardly entered into it at all. Maybe not at all.
While you were filming it?
While I was filming it, yes.
6.
In a way, it was another job.
It is July 16th.
But at the same time, it was the ultimate job.
5.
1969.
The expectations were just so extraordinary.
4.
Okay.
There's a huge crowd out here of reporters, visitors, VIPs, and others.
I mean, obviously, yeah. It must have been the biggest challenge of your life.
3.
Absolutely.
Milling around and talking and gossiping and handshaking and telling jokes.
I mean, the technical...
2, 1.
Not to get bogged down into the technical, but...
Making a lot of noise in a busy, vivid scene.
Just to make it seem like it's really the surface of the moon and...
0. Ignition sequence start.
I mean, you must have been technical challenges.
Yes.
Committing the greatest fraud.
Swing arm now coming back.
What you want to call it? I'm not saying it's a...
Okay. A lot about that at the time.
I know, so I'm not making moral judgment, but...
As our countdown continues.
We choose to go to the moon.
Well, we used a lot of front screen projection.
Making this huge, ambitious, technical faux landing. Right, the Scotch light service.
Exactly.
And you developed that technology, or you perfected that technology during the 2001 shoot?
That's right.
Okay, and
if you examine the photographs, the stills, you can actually see the stitching in the background.
You mean if you were to adjust gamma and contrast, you
That's
could?
Right.
Huh. Okay.
It's actually almost kind of eerie if you go in thinking, expecting one thing, and then come out with a whole different image.
Okay. So as you did this, unlike a film flaw where there's a continuity issue or whatever, you couldn't afford to make a mistake if you were doing this. I mean, the government, it's the most expensive movie ever made, essentially. And instead of bad reviews, you could have gotten a federal indictment if it was found out. So were you worried about making mistakes during it? I mean, what was your mindset while doing this? It must have been, was there creative conflicts? I mean, must have been was it difficult?
I wasn't worried of mistakes because I'm a professional. And I have grown, I've gotten better every year with each film, every 3 or 4 years, but I've gotten better with each film. On this one, at first I was swept away, of course, by the challenge and by the honor of it, by the flattery of it. But as I went along, I thought, just in case, maybe I should leave some clues here and there. Some obvious errors, obvious mistakes, not really obvious, but to the discerning eye, to leave some clues here and there, like the stitching in the backdrop, differences in texture, in lighting. If you look at the moon's surface, beyond a certain line, there was everything was blurred.
I see.
On the supposed surface of the moon, the rocks were bright, clear as anything on this side of the line, but on the other side, immediately you couldn't see them anymore.
The irreconcilable paradox of parallax, for example. I mean,
exactly.
Anyone with Photoshop, someone could examine those photos and easily measure the distances and angles.
It would take a very technical eye to do that. I mean, most people would not notice it at all.
Right. One thing, for example, is all the shadows would have to be in one direction, for example.
Right, but they weren't.
Okay.
Because
And
there was artificial light being used. Not the light from the moon. It just wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked that way.
You're saying you use fill lights, and
Yes.
nobody at the government noticed that a fill light would violate a basic tenet. I mean, you have the sun is the only light when you're up in the moon, and you're using fill light because why? Because it created better shots. If you
Yes.
did.
Yes.
So you were aware that you were actually doing something technically correct?
Shadows would converge at some points, which would not have happened with, light from the moon or some one source.
Right. Okay. So in other words, certain errors that you should have made.
Nobody was that keenly aware of it.
But do you feel like now with technology and computers that things like this could be more easily revealed?
Yes, but at this point I don't care.
And hence, that's why you're telling me.
Exactly.
You're not sick. You don't have any terminal disease.
Not the
And
moon.
so, in other words, since I guess no one knows when they're going to die, this feels like a deathbed confession, but you're obviously not near death.
I hope not.
And hence the burying it with the paperwork that I signed, unawares of why, but the 15-year moratorium on disclosing this. The point is now I completely understand why you did that. But you must have been, you must be wrestling with this issue. Is there, besides guilt, is there anger? Is there any other types of emotions that you're experiencing? I mean, what has it been like to having to carry this for so long? Have you put it in your other films? Have you sublimated it?
As sleazy as it may seem on the surface, on the part of the government I'm talking about, I really don't have anybody to blame but myself. Wow. I made the decision. I could have turned them down. I could have said no.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
But after seeing your film, I am convinced, and the gentlemen at NASA are also convinced, that you can help us make people believe that we have been to the moon and back.
And you must have been startled at that moment. Okay.
Actually, a little bit, but I also knew where this was going. I thought, what a trip. What a trip this is for me as an artist.
Okay, you were still young and wide-eyed.
I couldn't help it.
Okay.
It's part of being, it's like the, it's the DNA or something of an artist.
Like your adrenaline got going.
Yes.
Your juice is flowing. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
And I was excited.
All right,
He
go
didn't
on.
even have to finish, but he did. And explained to me that he wanted me to film a fake landing with fake astronauts, well, not real astronauts, but faking the exploration of space. Nixon, this next part was hard for him to say.
Towards me.
He looked at his drink kind of like this and said, we have to fake this. We have to fake this moon landing, just to keep interest in NASA, and in the next few years, we might actually be able to go for real.
Come on.
Because we wouldn't give up. We'd still work on it. We would still be working on it, trying to make this trip possible. But we have to do it now. Because we were so damn close. We had to do it now. If we didn't fake this, if we didn't lie about it, eventually people would lose interest, and the funding would dry up for NASA. It would just cease to exist, and the dream would be dead. It would be gone. The greatest thing in the world for this country would be to go to the moon.
Part of the 2001, was it very difficult?
The latest film is a culmination of just years of innovation, risk-taking, regrets.
I think it means that the job of landing something on the moon where there's no atmosphere and using a rocket to slow it up and having the equipment still work is a very difficult job.
We've been brought in here by Stanley Kubrick to more or less ensure the scientific integrity of the film.
I mean, what was the experience like?
To make sure that it's very, very close in reality, but still we want to make certain that it has a base of reality.
4 minutes and counting.
Before the end of the 60s, we will see a man in the moon.
This was the supreme challenge.
An American, and we're very proud that our country continues to produce these young men who go so far and carry with them so much.
Why?
We are go for Apollo 11.
To put people on the moon and with enough fuel to enable them to return safely home to Earth requires a still larger and more powerful rocket, however.
Because it was absolutely necessary.
It's going to take some time, and I think we have to recognize it. They secured these large boosters, which have led to their being first in Sputnik and led to their first putting their man in space. We are, I hope, going to be able to carry out our efforts with due regard to the problem of the life of the man involved this year.
Not only that people believe it,
But we are behind.
but they believe it in spite of.
However, let us imagine for a moment that the many problems have been solved.
The facts.
We are ready to begin our first voyage to the moon.
10 or 15 seconds from this time.
Everything I was filming.
It is quite possible that an aggressor nation that dominates space will then dominate the world.
Was a lie.
We're in the final assembly building of the LEM. Stanley Kubrick and I have set ourselves several objectives.
The vehicle starting to pressurize.
We hope to convey to the public the wonder and beauty and promise of the new age of exploration, which is opening up before the human race.
The lie.
Arthur, here we are on the LEM ship, and
On a grand scale.
one can almost imagine we're on our way to the moon.
A Stanley Kubrick production.
We've arrived at the moon, as a matter of fact.
There was too much riding on this whole thing.
Can you believe it?
I kept on falling short of something.
You basically are given a blank check by the government.
Can you realize that we, that you and I, that all of us, have actually begun the exploration of another world? We have taken the first historic step into our solar system.
You go where to film this? Where?
An enormous soundstage.
We shot it in a studio.
They had built one in Palmdale or Lancaster, I heard. I don't know where it was.
It's one small step for man.
Somewhere in Nevada.
1/10 scale model.
One giant leap for mankind.
Take 2.
It's one small step for man.
You can't say where.
All right, people.
No, because everything in Nevada stays in Nevada, but...
Okay.
Presented by NASA.
Nixon sat me down.
Let's get started.
The National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
That's good enough. Fair enough.
Hello, Apollo 11, Houston.
So...
Okay, fine. Let's just try one, okay?
This was all staged.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming.
And that's why the video was so crappy.
I'm going to step off the limb now.
In many cases, especially when the lunar module lifted off.
Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over.
Just looked like third-rate video, and they did that on purpose
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
to obscure the fact that it was a model.
Hello, Neil and Buzz.
This was...
I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House.
the biggest fiction
And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made.
Of them all.
In the whole history of man.
The audience.
All the people on this earth are truly one.
Is usually aware of the fiction.
One in their pride in what you have done.
This is a special kind of situation.
And one in our prayers that
this was like a documentary.
You will return safely to Earth.
And everything is go. 00197.
But
at 17,400 miles per hour.
As much fictional
Roger, Eagle, contact.
as anything else
Eagle has wings.
they've ever seen. It was about morale. Morale was about money. It was about chiefly money. Money, as most things are.
We, the crew of Apollo 11, are
trying to make this trip possible.
Privileged to represent the United States in.
We have to do it now.
Our first attempt.
Because we were so damn.
To take man to.
Because we were so damn.
Another heavenly body.
Because we were so damn close.
Man walks on the moon.
Man walks on the moon.
What happens there?
The first man from Earth walked on the surface of the moon this morning.
You're on set.
And the suspense here in London is unbelievable.
Could've gave up, man, but... And you gotta make a movie. Then again, I couldn't have good. That no one knows is a movie.
You saw this sort of a once in a many lifetime opportunity.
That's one small step for man.
About
no one knows it's a fiction movie.
Right. Well, they don't even think it's a movie. They think it's live television.
One giant pursuit for mankind.
See, it even confuses me sometimes.
Well, it's meta layered.
Yep. To play with all these billions of dollars.
I take it in, but don't look down.
And that's true, you know.
The ultimate.
Sometimes I actually believe it myself. It was that good.
I'm on top of the world.
Yes, this was the ultimate.
I'm on top of the world.
This was going to be my masterpiece. I felt it even then. I had to do this. I wanted to do it. I didn't care what was the reason for it. I wanted to do it. I needed to do it. It was like getting the life, the assignment, the production dream of a lifetime.
You got it.
And we're a great country. We have a lot of abilities, and when we direct our efforts toward an understood goal.
You can fool people with this. I am the greatest film artist of the 20th century.
Okay. It's been the biggest challenge of your life.
Absolutely.
We're a great country. We have a lot of abilities, and when we direct our efforts toward an understood goal, we usually solve the problems.
All right, testing 1, 2. All right, excuse me, sir. Could you just check my levels? Could you just say, could you say the title of your new film? That would be great for my levels.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes wide shut.
Okay.
Today, war is too important to be left to politicians.
Quilty, I want you to concentrate. You're going to die.
You're trying to make me jealous.
If you men only knew.
I just want to be good.
Goodness comes from within. Goodness is chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man.
Wendy, I'm home.
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man.
And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again. Hey,
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
Do you want to die standing up or sitting down? I want to die like a champion.
I will not go down in history as the greatest mass murderer since Adolf Hitler.
Now it was lovely music that came to my aid.
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. Here's Johnny.
Think we waistcoats for freedom? This is a slaughter.
We're awake now. And hopefully, for a long time to come.
I just want to be good.
Goodness comes from within. Goodness is chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man.
Wendy, I'm home.
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man.
And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again. Hey, I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
Do you want to die standing up or sitting down?
I want to die like a champion.
I will not go down in history as the greatest mass murderer since Adolf Hitler.
Now it was lovely music that came to my aid.
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. Here's Johnny.
Think we waistcoats for freedom? This is a slaughter.
We're awake now. And hopefully, for a long time to come.
We've been planning our 11th Apollo mission to the moon in 10 days' time. We still don't have a clue whether the thing's gonna make it or not. Do you know what happens if the Russians happen to make it to the moon first? We're gonna wind up looking like a bunch of dicks. So here's the plan. Meet with Kubrick. Convince him. You know, film a pretend moon landing.
Tried not to fuck everything up all the time.
Derek K? Huh? As I said to you on the phone, we have a proposal for Mr. Kubrick.
Cool.
There's a considerable amount of money in this project.
All you've got to do is sit in there for 5 minutes and pretend to be Stanley Kubrick.
We decided that there's only one man in the world that could pull this off.
And that man is?
Kubrick has made a rare visit to continental Europe.
Nice shirt, dude. Hey there.
Do you really want to go back to your boss and tell him that you don't have Stanley Kubrick and you don't have the money? We must be the only hope you've got.
Fucking hell.
Is Renatus in? We wants to know if you'd be interested in making a film.
We need it in 7 days.
I can't make a film in 7 days. Bounce to be 3 years.
This guy's a fucking asshole.
Of course he is. He's a film director. What if we doubled your money?
Do you think I'm a whore? I'm an artist.
Triple.
Okay.
You can bury my love, but I'll keep on keeping on. You can send my soul to the Lord above, but I'll keep on keeping on. Yes, I'll keep on keeping on. Acid is the best thing for headaches.
I'm CIA trained. My mind is too strong for that shit.
CIA?
And I know you haven't given many interviews in your life. And
I'm so preoccupied with my work.
Pernickety perfectionist you could possibly imagine.
Innovation.
Fortunately, the films were very good.
Risk-taking.
Say that despite his eccentricity, despite his reclusiveness, and despite the fact that he never gave interviews and kept himself in total secrecy,
Regrets.
he was a great filmmaker, and thank God for that.
Wilbur Wright once noted that the only bird that could talk was the parrot. And he didn't fly very well. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Very good, Jack. Excellent. Right. Check the gate, Doug. Well, many parts of that were good. There were quite a few hiccups, but many parts of it were very good.
Did you make the private journey to St Albans to meet and talk to him?
I had to do this.
Yes.
I wanted to do it.
What was your first impression of him
I didn't care what was the reason for it.
when you met him?
I wanted to do it.
I remember thinking.
I needed to do it. But it was like getting the
I remember thinking.
life, the
Well, he's sort of scruffy.
That's good enough.
And
Fair enough. So,
On the conversations, everybody, just mouth them. Don't speak, and don't. Joe, please. Don't nod your heads when you're talking. Just talk naturally to each other.
There's that pressure on almost every movie set, and it's here as well. It's just Stanley doesn't relate to it because he is doing exactly what he thinks he should be doing at that moment about it, you know, sort of very single-mindedly. He's emotional on the set.
There's no desperation. Oh, come on. What do you mean roll video? We're f***ing killing ourselves out here, and you've got to be ready.
I am too. I'm standing
Should we
right
play
by
mood
the
music?
door. No, I can't.
Yeah, but when you came in like this, you said just
We're sitting there because they say, wait a minute,
okay.
and then you say on the radio,
But when you
go.
do it, you've got to look desperate, Shelley. You're just wasting everybody's time.
If it hadn't been for that, volley of ideas and sometimes butting of heads together, it wouldn't have come out as good as it did because it builds up anger, actually. And he knew that, and he knew he was getting more out of me by doing that. So it was sort of like a game.
Everything is going extremely well. This way. I am constantly occupied. You've been doing some more work?
Very good, Jack. Excellent. Right. Check the gate, Doug. Well, many parts of that were good. There were quite a few ups, but many parts of it were very good.
that I had to do this. I wanted to do it. I didn't care what was the reason for it. I wanted to do it. I needed to do it. It was like getting the life, the assignment, the production dream of a lifetime.
What was your first impression of him?
He's in Nevada, but anyway.
Okay, you're there and
well, he's sort of scruffy.
okay, that's good enough. Fair enough. So
Fair to say that he was a scruffy guy, certainly unkempt in his last days. But maybe that's because to Stanley, nothing else mattered but film, art, and the search for truth. While completely human in more ways than probably any of us will ever know, he truly was a genius who possessed a gift that fortunately is immortalized. A gift my great-great-great-grandchildren, who I hopefully have them, will be able to watch and absorb as much as they can watch and absorb this, which, of course, compared to his work, is meaningless. But it doesn't really matter. Art is subjective, just like beauty, just like anything in life. And speaking with Stanley Kubrick exposed me to an insight about the human condition, which is this. Geniuses can be nice guys. Recluses can be friendly. Misunderstood people, if you take the time to really sit down and ask them, can be understood. And not everyone's an artist. Not everyone expresses himself through an externalized work like filmmaking. But that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, what I learned as a filmmaker was all you have to do, whether it's with a genius or a trash man, a filmmaker or a plumber, is just sit down with them and talk to them. Stanley famously said that movies were made in the editing. It was his favorite part. It's where the film is found. I don't know if I made a good film. I don't know if I did his interview justice. I somehow hope, some way, he can see it. That's around the corner as we investigate, or do we just sort of walk around and pretend nothing's going on with our eyes wide shut? It may be cliche, it may be trite, but to me, the film works on that level. And I will never forget that day in March '99. That extended into the night.
It must have been an unbelievable thing to have heard that he died so soon after the film had been finished. What was that to your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was one of absolute shock. And disbelief.
When I come up against a director who has a concept that maybe I don't agree with it, maybe I just hadn't thought of it.
You've got a big surprise coming to you.
I'd be more prone to go with them than my own. Because I want to be out of control.
You're not going anywhere.
I want them to have it.
Oh, check it out!
Hoax work of art. It was his ultimate work of art. And that's what Eyes Wide Shut is truly all about.
Kubrick began rolling film on his 14th and final feature in 1996. Kubrick had a habit throughout his career of picking leading men that were just left of center in terms of popularity or stardom. The two biggest stars he had worked with up to that.
Well, Victor, maybe I'm missing something here. You called it a fake, a charade. Do you mind telling me what kind of fucking charade ends with somebody turning up dead?
Either because we had bonded over the interview, or out of courtesy, or perhaps just having someone who shared a love of cinema with him, he showed me the cut he delivered to Warner Brothers the very morning of the interview that we had. Of course, he died 3 days later, but neither of us knew that at the time. And I watched this cut, which literally, by my computation, has about 33 minutes missing in terms of the Warner Brothers recut. But what the film is essentially about, when you include the footage that Kubrick had put in, which are mostly contextual scenes regarding the relationships between characters that in the current film have no relationship, as well as an expansion of the orgy scene.
I must see you again.
That's impossible.
Why?
Because I'm married.
Kubrick explained that this scene was very crucial for two reasons. Number one, this character reappears in his cut, and I'll explain later, but that Alice, in rejecting his advances, represents morality, represents the decision not to give in to the temptation that he posits he failed to resist in terms of the Faustian bargain with the moon hoax. Sidney Pollack's character, of course, represents, Kubrick explained, all of the powerful people that push these buttons and pull these strings, the very people he's famously been quoted saying to avoid.
Hey, man, I just played the piano.
Kubrick laughed out loud when we saw that line. He thought that it represented sort of the rejection of responsibility an artist can rationalize to himself by simply saying that they are doing their job. It's almost like the Nazi credo, if I was just following orders.
I can't thank you enough for this. You saved my ass.
Kubrick stopped the film at this line, telling me how important it was, that it was the central thesis of the entire film, that the drug overdose was in fact the Apollo program, realizing that it had a problem, just like she has a drug problem, it had a problem that it couldn't go to the moon, and that what had happened, her drug problem or OD, or the fact that they couldn't go to the moon, were both secrets that simply could not be told to anybody.
Yes.
No, I'm glad I was here.
And Bill, I know I don't have to mention this, but this is just between us.
Of course, Kubrick at the time didn't know who would be cut out of his film, but he told me that preceding line was the most important in the film. This idea that amongst these powerful men, there is this unspoken bond, rule, maxim, I'll call it whatever you will, that their eyes are wide shut, that they will never betray each other with expressions of the truth regarding anything that happens, good or bad, wrong or right, profitable or charitable. It is the omerta, the mafia code of silence among the elite. And the moon hoax one could argue is the ultimate secret, the ultimate operation of the elite, a multi-billion-dollar scam. There's just simply no other way to express it, regardless of any noble lies or justifications about geopolitical strategy or the morale of a nation that was in its adolescence.
Bill, I probably, I know I don't have to mention this, but this is just between us, okay? I know what happened. And I know what's been going on since then. And I think you just might have the wrong idea about one or two things.
In the movie released to the public, that reference has to do with the girl that died, when in fact it had to do with a major conversation cut out of the film amongst the man that tried to seduce Alice in the beginning and other powerful men in masks discussing upcoming major, shall we say, political events that will affect the financial and political future of the entire world. Foreshadowing of 9/11, let's put it that way. Kubrick probably admitted to me that while he did not see himself as the Cruise character per se, like most of his films, there were fractal truths within it, most of which is his paranoia and reclusiveness. As you can see here, he's being followed. And that's something that obviously dogged Kubrick. Within this elite society, the key is mutual leverage, almost as a form of deterrence. Everyone's got secrets on each other, therefore no one tells them about anybody. And that's how the system keeps on going around. Except Kubrick didn't want to play this game. He just wanted to make films. And he felt incredibly vulnerable, which is evident throughout the interview I did with him and in the things I did not show in the film, that he was trying to escape something, hide something, get away from something that he could not forget. And this truth ate away at him, both the conscience within it, in itself, and the fact that he was complicit in the manipulations of these men. Earlier in the film, with the joke scene I used here, the actual letter says, give up your inquiries, and this should be your second warning. But actually, when you look at the film Eyes Wide Shut, he is not making any early inquiries. I mean, he's not trying to find out more about the orgy he got kicked out of. In the film that Kubrick had cut, his inquiries revolve around what he heard, not saw at the orgy, what he heard these powerful men discuss in masks while they, in their company, presumed he was one of them. Did you ever think about how he got exposed? How they know that this guy in the mask, amongst hundreds of other guys, was the one guy that wasn't powerful and elite enough to be there? Well, it's because there were certain characters there, like the man that tried to seduce Alice in the beginning, like the man that was also of the same Hungarian descent that gave him the costume, and Lily Sobieski's character, the daughter, who actually was one of the women there for the men to partake to. She is a prostitute, which is evident in the scene, as well as the Japanese men at the store. I'm not trying to explain Kubrick's movie for him, even though somebody should. I'm just trying to contextualize the fact that he certainly made this film not as a necessarily direct explanation of the moon hoax, if it's true, but rather an overall explanation of how the world works at the most powerful levels, at the top of the pyramid. Not only do they have their sex parties, not only do they manipulate markets and start wars, but they have within their own personal eccentricities and peculiarities an unwritten code of silence, whether it be sex, war, drugs, or the affairs they may have with each other's wives. It's an amoral, degraded, completely upside-down system where right is wrong, up and down, left is right, black is white, all that. And I believe, I guess I got to say this, that there's a chance that he was killed for exposing this. But what do I know?
There is something very important that we need to do as soon as possible.
What's that?
Fuck.
In the end, sexuality in this film represents both power and intimacy. a context where secrets are shared and divulged. And that is the true meaning of the orgy scene and the entire film itself. There is simple proof that there are major holes cut out of Kubrick's original film that are very important. For example, at the end, why is the mask there? Alice certainly was not at the orgy, so how did it arrive? How was he found out so quickly at the orgy? Who was the man who nodded at him in the beginning when he entered? Moreover, why did the woman walk up to him, kiss him, and warn him that he was in danger? How did all these people separately know instantly who Cruise's character was, and they did not fit in a room full of 1,000 people with masks? He certainly didn't look any real different in terms of his costume. The fact is that these plot holes, the man up in the balcony, the woman making a connection with him, and characters that are not reintroduced later, but in the film, like the man that tries to seduce Alice, who is at the orgy. All of these things are evident and present in the cut that I saw with Kubrick. And it resulted in a film that was so powerful because, again, I'll reiterate, I am not contending this is about the moon hoax. I'm contending simply that Kubrick became, in a way, obsessed as an artist with the culture that created the moon hoax, the culture that allowed for this power to go unchecked, for these men to make up the rules as they went along, these men that simply play by no rules. And that's what the film's about. And I believe that's why Warner recut it. And I think, going out on a limb here, that's why 3 days later, Stanley Kubrick was, well, let's just say, removed as a threat to the truth. He would, I think, in the end, rather die than to make films that were not expressive of the truth he increasingly became aware of, if albeit uncomfortable with. And I guess the challenge to us as viewers, cinephiles, or just human beings is, do we look at it? Do we digest it? Do we take it in? Do we look that guy, the truth that's following us around the corner as we investigate? Or do we just sort of walk around and pretend nothing's going on with our eyes wide shut? It may be cliche, it may be trite, but to me, the film works on that level. And I will never forget that day in March 99 that extended into the night.
Passed away 1 week after finishing this film. May he rest in peace.